galak po namin sabihin, from BARM to NCR, from Region 1 to Region 12, meron po tayong viewers. Kaya thank you po sa paghintay. At magsa-start na po tayo. To start po, let us pray po, a simple prayer. Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you po sa pag-iingat for each of us, and we pray that this event will be fruitful po sa purpose po na aming ipinunta dito. This we pray in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Ngayon po, may I request everyone to stay standing for the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Bayang magiliw, temas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, buyan ka ng magiging, sa manlulupi, di ka masisingil, sa lalat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mo bangay, ay ilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang tinamahal. Ang kisap ng watawat mo'y nagumpay na nag-iigil, ang bituin at araw niya kailan papalik ang titigil. Lupa ng araw ng maraming pagsita, buhay sa ating ko. Aming ligaya dapat may mamagin, at namatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Ayan po, we may all be seated po. So, thank you po ulit for waiting po. And pakilala lang po, I am Attorney Josh Quiroz po. I am a lawyer for Upholding Life and Nature, ULAN po. So, to start po, let's start with abang po. I'm going Hello? Ayan. I'm going to introduce po our special and honorary guest. So, ipakilala ko po, he is a graduate with a degree in AB Political Science, and he graduated as a cum laude, and he has a Bachelor of Laws degree from the Lyceum of the Philippines University. He is also a holder of a Master of Laws degree from the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. He is also a for a master's degree in public administration. He is a lawyer and an election law practitioner. As part of the Legal Academy, he is a professor of law, an MCLE lecturer, and a research person in election law. He is the founder and principal of G.E. Garcia Law Office. He is also the dean of the College of Law and the Law Center of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. He is the chairman of the board for Great Star Resources Incorporated. He is also a radio and TV host for UNTV. He has handled a broad selection of cases po before the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, the Sandigan Bayan, the different electoral tribunals, the COMELEC, the COA, Ombudsman, as well as lower courts and prosecutors' offices po. He is Hello, ayan. He is also a consistent academic scholar, awardee of the 10 Outstanding Students of the Philippines, 10 Outstanding Students of Manila, and Outstanding Student for Academic Excellence and Leadership during his time as a student in Lyceum of the Philippines University. Please give a more than deserved round of applause. He is here to give us an inspirational message. He is the current chairperson of the COMELEC, the Honorary Attorney George Erwin M. Garcia.
Hello. Yan. Depende raw sa gwapo yun eh. Kapag nawawala yung microphone. Mas gwapo pag nawawala ng microphone. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat, kay Commissioner Celis, kay Yusek Llamas, kay Atty. Gutierrez, Executive Director ng ULAN, sa lahat ng officials, staff ng ULAN. Maraming salamat sa pagkakataon. Sa COMELEC family, lalong-lalo na sa ating Vulnerable Sectors Office, sa ating Assistant Regional Director ng NCR, at the same time mga election officers natin from Bulacan. Maraming salamat at naimbitahan tayo dito. Alam nyo, pag-assume ko dyan, ang unang sinabi ko, gusto ko yung centerpiece ng ating administration and leadership, yung heart and soul should be yung pag-alaga natin sa vulnerable sectors. And yun ang kadahilanan kung bakit sa 33 reform agenda na nilatag natin para sa mga pagbabagong gusto natin mangyari sa COMELEC, ang number 1 doon, ang kauna-unahan, early voting for senior citizens, PWDs, kasama na ang pregnant women. Sapagkat gusto natin ipagpursigihan yon na sa ating palagay, hindi sapat lang ang emergency accessible polling precincts na yan naman ang ipinaglalaban ng ULAN. Nakasama nyo rin ang COMELEC dyan. Kung hindi kinakailangan, mas pabutuhin natin na mas maaga ang mga nakatatanda at saka ang mga may kapansanan at mga buntis o nagdadalang tao. Subalit, alam niyo po, mas madaling sabihin yun eh. Kahit pa may batas, mas madali ring sabihin na may batas, dapat talaga pabutuhin na mas maaga kahit 1 linggo bago mag-eleksyon. Subalit yung pagpapatupad nun, maniwala po kayo, from the point of view of COMELEC, ay hindi ganon kadali. Sapagkat kinakailangan magpa-special registration ka para mga sa senior citizens, sa PWDs, hindi mo pwede i-consider automatically na ang mga PWDs at saka senior citizens ay mag-early voting. Hindi pwedeng ganon. Kasi kahit sa amin po, sa atin sa emergency accessible polling precincts, eh, hindi naman automatic na sila kaagad ay gusto makapasok doon o doon sila boboto halimbawa. So, ibig sabihin, madami pang dapat gawin ang komisyon at lalong-lalo na nakakailanganin ng dagdag na gastos kapag ka nag-early voting ang mga senior citizens at saka PWDs. Subalit sa kasalukuyan, set aside muna natin yung ating ambisyon na magkaroon ng batas. Sa kasalukuyan, ano ba ang state of things as far as senior citizens voting, PW votings are concerned? Ano ang state of things sa kasalukuyan? Siyempre, gumawa tayo ng paraan sa tulong ng ULAN, sa tulong din ng iba pang citizens arm at civil society. Ay nagtayo po ang komisyon ng Vulnerable Sectors Office, yung VSO. Ang sabi ko kay Atty. Vicinio, sabi ko sa kanya, dapat mas palakihin natin ang VSO office mo. Sa mas ngayon na maliit, aminin na natin na ito ay isang ad hoc office lamang, kinakailangan para maipakita natin, na sinasabi nating heart and soul, kinakailangan ipakita natin na mas equip resources-wise and kahit paano yung kanyang capacity para makatulong sa ating mga vulnerable sectors. At siyempre, kinakailangan dagdag dyan yung pag-aaral patungkol sa emergency accessible polling precinct natin. USEC kasi, USEC Llamas, alam nyo, napaka-importante yung emergency accessible polling precincts. Nung nakarang eleksyon itong 2022, ako po'y pumunta sa ilang presinto, sa ilang polling place dito sa Manila. At talagang nakita natin, yung mga nakatatanda, yung mga may kapansanan, sila ang may, alam nyo naman yun, Yusek, ikaw ay naging kapitan ka sa Pasay. Ang pinakalaging maagang bumoto, hindi ko ba alam kung bakit, malapit ka nang magbumoto rin ng ganun kaaga, eh yung mga senior citizens. 4:00 pa lang pumipila na ang mga yan, gumigising. Hindi mo na sila kinakailangang kumbinsing bumoto dahil natural na sa kanila yung boboto na maaga. Yung mga may kapansanan, ang iba naka-wheelchair, nakatungkod, yung iba talaga inaasistahan ng mga kamag-anak o kasamahan. Pero napakaaga nilang bumoto. Unfortunately, nakita natin ito, nasaksihan natin itong nakaraang eleksyon ng 2022. Maaga silang pumupunta, kasabay kasi silang bumoboto ng mga ordinary voters. And therefore, ang iba minsan ay nababalya, ang iba minsan ay naiipit, yung iba talaga, meron talaga, kung hindi nagkaroon ng emergency accessible polling precinct, ang state of things natin at that time, tumataas sa 2nd floor, may 3rd floor. Eh may kapansanan na nga eh. Di ba? Pero gusto lang makaboto. Gustong ma-exercise ang right to vote. And we have to understand that the right to vote is available to all citizens of this country na qualified per the provision mismo ng Constitution. Yung emergency polling precinct is a very big step in order to ensure sufficient and proper participation of the vulnerable sectors in our society. Kaya lang, nakita ko rin po yung mga recommendations po, lalo-lalo na ng ULAN. Kaya lang po, ang kauna-unahan laging issue, pondo. Kasi para magdagdag ka ng emergency polling precinct sa bawat polling place, sa bawat eskwelahan, mag-create ka ng isang presinto, kakailanganin mo ng additional staff. Kakailanganin mo ng additional resources. additional ballot box, additional machines, etc. And therefore, additional expenses. And that's the reason why mas maganda talaga sana kung meron tayo 106,000 precincts, halimbawa sa buong Pilipinas, 107,000. Pagkatapos meron tayong ilang poll, dapat sana lahat ng polling places around the country, sana meron talagang bawat isang polling place, merong isang emergency accessible polling precinct. Kaya lang, resources-wise, hindi natin kaya. So, kasamahan niyo po kami ng ULAN at ng iba pang grupo na makiusap sa ating Kongreso kapag dinefend na namin yung budget namin para sa 2025 election, sa mga susunod na election, samahan niyo kami na sana madagdagan upang mas makapag-establish tayo na kung hindi man nila maipasa kagad ang batas patungkol sa early voting para sa senior citizens, ayun man lang, mas mapaigting natin yung emergency accessible polling precinct sa bawat barangay, sa bawat polling place. Dahil doon, maipapakita natin na yung pagkalinga natin sa mga nakatatanda at sa mga may kapansanan. Yun kasi ang priority kagad natin. Ilang milyon ang mga nakatatanda? 10 milyon. Gano'ng kadami ang PWDs? Almost 500,000. Pero tingnan niyo po yung nakakaboto sa kanila. Hindi gano'n kataas. Bakit hindi natin ma-ambisyon na kahit man lang yung mga PWDs kahit man lang 70%? Hindi yung sa kasalukuyan na almost 40%. Bakit hindi man lang yung mga senior citizens na 10 milyon, ma-ambisyon natin kahit man lang 80 milyon or 80%, ay makaboto sila. Magagawa lamang natin yung kung magagarantya natin na yung pagpunta nila sa bawat presinto ay magiging kaaya-aya sa kanila at makakabalik sila sa bawat bahay nila nang walang nararamdamang karamdaman o hindi nahirapan sa pagboto. Because in the final analysis, that should be the business of COMELEC to ensure that voters are able to vote no matter what, and at the same time, to ensure that people will be able to participate in that electoral exercise. Sa aking palagay, pag nagawa ng COMELEC yun at nakumbinsi natin ang mga mamamayan na exercise nila ang right of suffrage, kumpleto na yung pagtalima namin sa aming pong tungkulin na nakalagay sa saligang batas. Kaya ito pong undertaking na ginagawa ng ULAN ay isang napakalaking hakbang upang ipagpursigihan natin ang pagkalinga natin sa senior citizens, sa PWDs and other vulnerable sectors. Sapagkat diyan natin maipapakita na ang pagpoprotekta at pagsisigurado ng malusog na demokrasya ay hindi lamang tungkulin ng COMELEC. Ito ay tungkulin ng bawat isa because the business of election is not only the business of the COMELEC, it is the business of everyone. It is the business of the entire Republic. Magandang umaga po at maraming salamat.
Ayan, thank you po, Chairman, for the wonderful speech. Alam ko po, hindi lang po ramdam ng mga tao po dito sa venue, kundi ng ating online listeners po, ang advocacy at passion po ni Chairman po sa pinaglalaban niya. Kaya thank you po ulit, Chairman, sa inyong inspirational message. Lahat po kami na-inspire. So, isa pa pong palakpak para kay Chairman po. Thank you po. Ayan po, nabanggit po ni Chairman sa kanyang speech po yung VSO o Vulnerable Sectors Office at yung importansya niya po sa mission at vision ng COMELEC na maging mas inclusive and accessible ang ating elections, both national and local, sa mga vulnerable sectors tulad ng PWDs and senior citizens. Kaya ngayon po, it is my honor po to introduce po our next speaker. After a few moments lang po. Ayan po. Now, it is the time to invite our second speaker and our first presenter of today's program po. He is an integral part of the COMELEC's efforts to make our national and local elections more accessible and inclusive to our vulnerable sectors. He is the head of the COMELEC's Vulnerable Sectors Office, or VSO, and he is the current Assistant Regional Election Director of Region 4B. Please give a warm applause to Attorney Fernando C. Besinio.
Somebody. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Comcelis and all the guests. Today, I'm going to present to you the result or report on the EAPP voting in the last May 9, 2022 national elections involving senior citizens and persons with disability. So let me start by establishing the precinct. For purposes of voting, our senior citizens and persons with disabilities have the following options where they can cast their vote. Una po, yung regular or established precinct. Next is the accessible polling precinct. The third is the emergency accessible polling precinct. And the last one is the satellite emergency accessible polling precinct. Ano po yung regular or established precinct? Ito po yung precincts na na-establish using the basic unit of territory na ginawa ng Commission on Election for purposes of voting. So lahat po ng voters, as a general rule, kasama po dito sa regular precincts. Now, because of the accessibility law, the Commission on Elections come up with accessible polling precincts which is made to accommodate yung ating senior citizens and persons with disability who are having difficulty of casting their vote doon sa kanilang regular or established precincts. So, as much as possible, the APP shall be located at the ground floor, preferably near the entrance of the building and free from any physical barriers and provided with necessary services including assistive devices. Ang APP po, ang presinto na naka-attach pa rin po doon sa regular precinct. Halimbawa po, A1, may mga persons with disability and senior citizens doon. Ang ginagawa lang po ng COMELEC ay nakalagay sila sa P1. So kasama pa rin po sila doon sa kanilang established precinct. Now, it may happen that there are some senior citizens and persons with disability who failed or did not avail of the accessible polling precinct. Ano po yung mga possible na dahilan? Una, ayaw pong mawalay ng ating mga senior citizens and persons with disability doon sa kanilang mga kasama sa bahay. Kapamilya, belong to the same household. Why? Dahil pagka po sila ay nag-avail ng APP, ihiwalay po sila doon sa kanilang regular precinct na kung saan kasama nila yung kanilang mga kasama sa bahay. Now, meron din naman maaari din naman mangyari na yung mga senior citizens o yung mga persons with disability ay hindi nag-update ng kanilang registration record. So, to solve the problem, the Commission came up with the Emergency Accessible Polling Precinct. Ito yung binabanggit po kanina ni Chairman na mga makeshift na established at the ground floor of a voting center or outside of it na malapit po doon sa established precinct where persons with disabilities, senior citizens, and heavily pregnant voters falling under Section 2 may vote during elections. Sino-sino po yung nasa Section 2? Yung po yung mga hindi nag-avail ng APP, yung po yung mga hindi nag-update ng kanilang registration record availing of the APP, at sila din po yung mga heavily pregnant women at pang-apat, yung po yung mga nag-suffer ng temporary or permanent disability after the registration record. Meron din po tayong tinatawag na Satellite Emergency Accessible Polling Precinct. Ito naman po yung mga APP na established in a building used as a home or residence of senior citizens or persons with disability. Ang example po nito, yung tahanang walang hagdan, and then yung haven for the elderly na mga operated by government institutions or private institutions. So, ayan po yung ating mga presinto. Now, ano po ang kadalasang nagiging challenge dito sa paggamit ng APP o nagiging na-encounter ng mga problema ng ating ilang election officers? Kung mapapansin po ninyo, marami ang nag-a-avail ng emergency polling precinct rather than do sa accessible polling precincts which is mandated by law. Bakit po? Kasi dito sa APP nga, nabanggit ko kanina, na ihihiwalay ang mga senior citizens sa kanilang mga kapamilya. Pangalawa, sa APP, wala po sila doong priority. Kaya ayaw po nilang i-avail yan. Kaya, ang nangyayari, come elections day, kung nagkaroon lang sila ng difficulty of going to the regular precinct, sa kanila gagamitin yung EAPP, which is not mandated by law, but a remedy provided for by the Commission on Elections to address yung mga issues or mga difficulties or challenges na may encounter ng mga senior citizens and persons with disability during elections. So next. So who may avail of the EAPP? Again, nabanggit ko nga po, sila yung mga PWD or persons with disability and senior citizens who did not avail of the APP. And then next, PWD or senior citizens who did not update their registration record. Next, those who become disabled or incapacitated temporarily or permanently after registration. And lastly, mga heavily pregnant women, mga 6 months. Okay? So sa data po natin, based on 2019 elections, we have 8,586,500 senior citizens and 511,632 PWDs. Come 2022, the number of senior citizens increased up by 10,085,956, while the PWD is 511,612. Medyo bumaba po siya compared noong 2019. Pasensya na kayo, medyo namamalata ko. Okay? So, next. So, noong 2022, again, ang registered voters natin, all in all, between senior citizens and PWD is 10,587,568. But out of this, we established the following accessible polling precincts, 7,184. Sa EAPP, we established 2,107 at we have 3 SEAPP. Of this number, only 3.86% of senior citizens and persons with disability ang nag-avail ng APP. So, ang total po nila ay 400,021 and 421,221. So, napakababa po nung nag-avail ng APP noong 2022 elections. Now, ito po yung figures naman ng mga senior citizens who avail of the EAPP turn. Okay? So sa senior citizens, ang nag-avail po ay 1,068,138. Ang PWD naman po, ang nag-avail ay 61,963. Ito po ay base sa report na nagather namin sa VSO mismo. Base ito sa report na isinabmit ng ating mga election officers. Hindi po kasama dito yung turnout ng mga voters who availed of the APP kasi po yung boto nila doon will be under sa ERSD. Ito po yung sa EAPP which is talaga required sila mag-submit sa aming office. So, ayan po. So, yung ibang data po namin dito ay hindi ko na po muna isinama because of some issues that we need to reconcile with the main office sa EBAD at saka sa ERSD. Okay? Thank you po.
Ayan po, thank you Attorney Besinio po for telling us about senior citizen and PW voting. Before we continue with the program po, meron po tayong special video message from no other than the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines and the Secretary of the Department of Education. Siya po si Vice President Sara Duterte.
Assalamualaikum. Madayaw, mayong adlaw kaninyong tanan. Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Congratulations to the entire team comprising the Upholding Life and Nature or ULAN Foundation for the successful launching of the Emergency Accessible Polling Places Monitoring Report. The latest national elections may have polarized many communities, but it recorded the highest national voter according to the Commission on Elections. This is a testament to the increased interest of Filipinos to participate more proactively in our economic and political affairs, which could bode well for our effort to rebuild from the setbacks of the pandemic. Along with the increased interest to exercise suffrage comes the government's responsibility to make the voting process inclusive, including the process of voting for persons with disabilities, senior citizens, pregnant women, and other citizens who have mobility issues or could not otherwise vote in the regular polling precincts. This is part of the national effort to make public participation more inclusive for Filipinos. We thus look forward to the report to see how we fared in this inclusive approach and how much more we need to work on to make the voting process more inclusive for Filipinos. While addressing the mobility issues during the voting process is a good start, much work remains to be seen to include other disability concerns, including the hearing impaired and the blind. This is a challenge, but one that we take constructively to ensure that the sanctity of choices of all Filipinos are considered, respected, and valued. Every Filipino has the right to choose and the privilege to dream for a future that includes him or her. Patuloy nating mahalin ang Pilipinas. Shukran.
Yan po, thank you po Vice President Sara Duterte for that special message po para sa amin po. We will take it to heart po. And now po, I'm here, I wish I could introduce po our third speaker. Unfortunately, Attorney Honey Samaniego po cannot make it today because she is indisposed. Pero po, in lieu of Attorney Honey, I will be presenting in her place po, introducing myself for the second time today po. Again, I am Attorney Josh Quiroz po. I am a lawyer for Upholding Life and Nature. And I am here to speak briefly about po yung pending bills po natin in Congress po, in the House of Representatives and the Senate po, regarding accessibility and inclusivity of voters such as senior citizens and PWDs. So ayan po, pending bills in Congress, PWD and senior citizens, inclusivity and accessibility in elections po. So our agenda po, brief lang po. First, I'll give an overview. Second po, we'll focus on the pending bills before the House of Representatives, followed by the Senate, a brief summary, then input po from ULAN. So before pala po I start, my disclaimer lang po, ang bills po na aming nahanap are based to those bills po, the pending bills that are available for public perusal po with the House of Representatives and the Senate po. So with that in mind, let's continue na po. So the 2022 national and local elections have recently concluded. We saw the application of Republic Act number 10366 and COMELEC resolution number 10761. With these two laws and resolutions po, dyan po yung basis po ng EAPP po or yung tinatawag na Emergency Accessible Polling Place. So nakita rin po natin yung establishment and implementation of EAPPs in voting centers nationwide. So, actually, hindi lang po EAPP yung law and it's not gonna be the end of our efforts po to make our national and local elections more inclusive and accessible. So, sa House of Representatives po, we have 13 applicable bills in the context of election process voting experience. 10 out of these 13 po pertain to early voting. 2 out of these 13 pertain to amending Republic Act number 10366, and 1 out of these 13 pertain to online voter registration. So let's get into the details po. So ayan po yung early voting bills po. So they all share a common title, silang 10 po. An act providing for early voting by qualified senior citizens and persons with disabilities in national and local elections po. So ayan po sila. I won't read them na po, pero ayan po sila, 10. So next po is the salient features that this bill share. So number 1 is early voting. Basically, it says that for NLEs or national and local elections, qualified PWDs and senior citizens may choose to cast their ballots at accessible establishments designated by the COMELEC within 7 working days before the date set for national and local elections. So, mauuna po sila before yung mass election day po mismo. The second salient feature is about registration po. There shall be a nationwide registration for PWDs and senior citizens to qualify them to avail of the early voting privilege. Those who are not registered shall vote on election day. So in essence po, kung matupad po itong mga bills na to, there will be 2 registrations po. One is yung voter registration and second po is yung early voting registration po. So, and the third salient feature of this bills po is the obligations of the commissions of elections on elections. So first is to keep a record of senior citizens and PWDs who are registered voters. Second is to design a registration system in coordination with local government units and various government agencies. The third one is to ensure that said polling places are safe and accessible to senior citizens and PWDs and properly fitted with the necessary communication, visual, and physical aids as mandated under RA number 10366. And finally po, to mount an intensive information campaign on early voting for qualified senior citizens and persons with disabilities. So the status po, currently, the House Committee on Suffrage and Electoral Reforms on November 9, 2022 approved the measure. The committee agreed to consolidate the bills and come up with a substitute bill to be submitted to the plenary for second and third reading approval po. Other notes po, previously sa previous Congress po, a similar measure po was attempted to be passed pero unfortunately it did not po. So moving on po, we have bills amending Republic Act number 10366. So this is House Bill number 126 and House Bill 1221 po. So basically po, it seeks to expand or improve upon RA number 10366. Moving on to its salient features po. So number 1 is the expanded definition of accessible polling places. It particularly amends Section 2, Paragraph J of said RA number 10366. It provides that an accessible polling place should not only be located at the building kung saan po nagaganap yung mismong election, but such must be A, readily accessible to public transportation, B, free from any physical barriers, and C, provided with the necessary infrastructure and ramps, railings, sidewalks, adequate lighting, ventilation, and other features for PWDs and senior citizens. Mamaya po makikita po natin kung bakit po relevant po ang certain provisions na ito. So the second salient feature po is designation of precincts po. It amends in particular Section 9 of Republic Act number 10366 precincts. It provides that the COMELEC is authorized to designate instead of establish precincts in accessible polling places for the exclusive use of PWDs and senior citizens, such as in public schools, town halls, plazas, and the like, and preferably to those designated with special features to ensure their safety and comfort. So unlike po sa existing 10366 po na parang may particular area po sila kung saan po sila mas makakaboto po ng maayos po, dito po may dedicated voting precinct na po sila. So moving on po to the status, it is referred to the House Committee on Suffrage and Electoral Reforms for approval. So moving on, the online voter registration bill as contained in House Bill 4133 po. Salient features lang po, it basically proposes an automated and online voter registration system. It enables the electronic and online filing. So lahat po ng processes and applications relative sa pag-voter registration, yung pag-update, kamusta na yung proseso, kamusta na yung application mo, the House Bill proposes that all of this is done online po. Pero syempre, we have concerns po which will be brought up later. So, the status po of the online voter registration bill, it is also referred to the House Committee on Suffrage and Electoral Reforms for approval. So, moving on naman po sa Senate, we have 5 applicable bills in the context of election process voting experience. So, 2 out of these 5 pertain to improving accessibility to vulnerable sectors. 1 out of 5 pertains to alternative modes of voting. 1 out of 5 pertains to a proposed new omnibus election code, and 1 out of 5 pertain to hybrid elections. So start po tayo. So the 2 accessibility bills, one was proposed by Senator Sonny Angara, and the other is proposed by Senator Win Gatchalian. So may similarities po sila. So sa salient features, early voting. Qualified voters may choose to cast their ballots for a period of not less than 2 days within 15 days po sa Senate Bill number 777 and 30 days under Senate Bill number 1056. 30 days po before election day at accessible establishments designated by the COMELEC. Another common feature between these 2 Senate bills po is the postal early voting option. Members of the vulnerable sectors who are registered for early voting shall have the option to cast their ballots via post office in designated precincts. Voters who wish to vote via post must first be registered to do so with the COMELEC. And last po, nabanggit po yung emergency accessible polling places only in Senate Bill number 1056. It basically refers to designation and establishment of EAPP sites po. So the status po, they are both read on the first reading and referred to the following committees po. So silang tatlo po. And moving on po, a bill on alternative modes of voting. It is proposed by Senator Amy R. Marcos po. It is Senate Bill number 1160. So ayan po siya. Salient features po, local absentee voting. So it wants to expand po yung current local absentee voting natin. The COMELEC shall extend the right to vote under the local absentee voting system provided under existing laws and executive orders to qualified members of the vulnerable sectors. They may cast their ballot for a period of not less than 2 days within 7 calendar days before elections at accessible establishments designated by the COMELEC. So another po is nabanggit ulit, emergency accessible polling places po. So it amends Section 2, Paragraph J of Republic Act number 10366 po. So similar to a previous House bill po sa House of Representatives, it proposes that the polling places must be readily accessible to public transportation and ready with the necessary infrastructure po to assist PWDs and senior citizens. Again po, makikita po natin later bakit relevant po ito. And third po is simple po, transportation and shuttle services. The bill proposes a system of transportation or shuttle services to be provided by the COMELEC to members of the vulnerable sector during the period of local absentee voting. So the status po, it is read on the first reading and referred to the following committees po. So moving on po, we have the bill proposing a new omnibus election code, also proposed by Senator Amy R. Marcos po. It is Senate Bill number 179. So salient features po. Application for registration by PWDs. So Section 28, Article 3 of the proposed new omnibus code po. The application for registration of a PWD or a senior citizen may be prepared by any relative within the fourth civil degree of consanguinity or affinity, by the election officer, by any member of an accredited citizen's arms, or, in the absence of any of the foregoing, by any person of his or her confidence who belongs to the same household using the data supplied by the applicant. So need po ditong ma-indicate anong type of disability meron and anong form of assistance yung kinakailangan ng voter po whenever applicable. So the second salient feature po is registration to avail of local absentee voting. So it refers to Section 29, Article 3 of the proposed new Omnibus Election Code. Persons who are qualified to avail the local absentee voting must register within the period provided by the COMELEC in order to exercise this privilege. And second po, they must keep a record of PWD and senior citizens po. So it must indicate the type of disability, and ang purpose po ng record na to is to assist the COMELEC in future policy making po to make the elections more inclusive and accessible to vulnerable sectors. So current status po, it is also read on the first reading and referred to the following committees: the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation, and the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development. And lastly for the Senate po is the Bill on Hybrid Elections, also filed by Senator Amy R. Marcos po. It is titled as the Hybrid Elections Act. So for the salient features, what does she mean by hybrid elections po? So pinapalitan po nito yung Automated Election System or AES, pinapalitan po ng Hybrid Election System or HES. A system using appropriate technology which has been demonstrated in the voting, counting, consolidating, canvassing, and transmission of election results and other electoral processes, but also utilizes manual counting to ensure transparency and credibility of the electoral processes. So kaya po pala tinawag na hybrid kasi hindi lang po automated, gusto rin po ng manual counting concurrently. For the second salient feature po, it proposes a different form of the official ballot for PWDs and persons unable to read and write. So it authorizes the COMELEC to prescribe a different form of official ballot on the same watermarked security paper to facilitate voting by PWDs and by persons who are unable to read and write. So next po is the adoption of latest technology. The COMELEC should use or adopt the latest technological and electronic devices in connection therewith as to enable such voters to confirm that the accompanying person truly adhered to the voter's choice of candidates po. So as to its status, it is also read on the first reading and referred to the following committees po. So in summary po, we have 13 pending bills before the House of Representatives and 5 before the Senate relative to accessibility and inclusivity of senior citizens and PWDs. So as to the topic of early voting, bills present in the House of Representatives and the Senate. As to postal voting, only mentioned in a Senate bill. Local absentee voting, only mentioned in a Senate bill. As to EAPPs, both bills from the House of Representatives and the Senate po mention or propose improving or expanding upon the existing EAPP laws. Amendments to RA number 10366, both houses po have pending bills. As to the new Omnibus Election Code, only the Senate bill filed by Senator Marcos po. Online voters registration, only the one described in the House of Representatives. And as to hybrid elections, also the one mentioned that was proposed by Senator Amy Marcos po. So in summary po, ayan po, numerous bills are pending in Congress. So hindi pala po EAPP law yung nag-end ng sentence po. It's just a comma, may kasunod pa po siya. And in a way po, we can treat it as a metaphor na hindi pa po siya yung end of the story. Second po, amendments and improvements to EAPPs. Marami pong bills focused on improving or expanding the role of EAPPs in our NLEs. So next po is new modes of registration and voting na banggit po, such as online registration, hybrid elections, early voting, and finally, use of technology po, adoption and or utilization of the internet and the latest technology to introduce innovations to the voting system. So, ang tanong po, are these spending bills enough po? So, for input po, briefly lang po na pansin lang po ng ULAN po, upon reading said bills po, there are risks and threats in adoption of technology-based innovations. Siguro unang pumapasok po sa isip natin yung hacking po. May nangyayailang ba sa votes integrity? Second is the varying quality of implementation nationwide, which we will see shortly po. Number 3 is capacity building of LGUs related to the second point po. Number 4 is the preservation of integrity of votes in the midst of increased inclusivity and accessibility. And lastly po, should there be dedicated bills po for indigenous peoples po? So that is it for my presentation po. Remind ko lang po everyone, hindi lang po sa presentation ko, but sa presentation po ni Attorney Besinio po kanina, if you have questions or comments po, we have an open forum session later po. So hold on lang po to those questions po. So thank you po. Together, let us make our national and local elections more inclusive and accessible to our PWDs and senior citizen voters. Maraming salamat po. Ayun po, unfortunately, hindi pa po ako aalis dito sapagkat may isa pa po kong i-present sa inyo on behalf of Upholding Life and Nature po. Ito po ay isang video presentation na ginawa po ng ULAN nung isinagawa po namin yung monitoring ng EAPP sites nationwide. Maraming salamat po sa volunteers po namin at sa PPCRV po. Thank you po, lalo na sa BARM region po, sa mga nanonood po online. Thank you po. And ito po ang results po ng aming efforts po. thank you po for watching, and we hope po from ULAN that the video help you to form insights po about EAPPs nationwide po. And speaking of ULAN and speaking of EAPPs po, let me introduce our fourth speaker and our final presenter for today po. He is a lawyer and advocate for environmental law, PWDs, senior citizens, and indigenous peoples. He is also a professor of law at the Ateneo de Manila School of Law and assistant professor at the Philippine Judicial Academy po. Please welcome po the co-founder and executive director of Upholding Life and Nature, boss ko po, si Attorney Ronaldo Gutierrez.
Thank you and good morning. Sige, in the interest of time, we'll just go directly to the presentation. But very quickly lang po before I begin. First, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Yusek Llamas. No? And earlier, we had Chair Garcia and Commissioner Celis. No? They had to leave because there is an NBank meeting right now. But we still have a number of COMELEC representatives, our friends from COMELEC who are still here and also from different offices. We also have our friends from NCIP, NCDA, sino pa bang naiwan ko? NDILG, of course. No? All right, so, and also our friends who are also watching, and we'd like to thank, of course, our Vice President and Secretary of DepEd for taking time to give a message to ULAN for this event. No? So we will be reporting on our efforts to monitor the emergency accessible polling places, or EAPPs or EAPP, for the 2022 national and local elections. This is the second elections we're doing this on a national scale. No? So this is the part na medyo magkaiba kami ni ni Arid Besinyo, no? Because our data from 2019, we got from the presentation of Director Divine, Ebad. So our PWDs numbered 345,699. I think yung data ni Arid Besinyo is already 511,000. So parang there was a drop by 20,000, whereas we reflect a 48%. No? So we got our figures from the presentation of Director Divine in 2019. So we need to parang reconcile the two. No? But more or less, as far as senior citizens are concerned, we have the same. Na it started at around 8 million in 2019 and then rose to 10 million, or by 24.2%, an increase of 24.2% within that 3-year period. No? So overall, our figures show na yung, not our figures, but the one that was presented in 2019 when we made the similar reporting, it was 8.5 million approximately, and then rose to around 10.4 million, or an increase by 25.2%. No? Right now, this was already explained, so I'll just very quickly go over this. No? So why do we have EAPPs? It's to address the fact that majority of the senior citizens and PWDs did not indicate or signify their intention to vote in EAPPs, no, during the registration period. No? So more likely than not, they will be voting in places that are not accessible. And the reason why we showed you the video is to show what they look like. No? They did not come from us. They were actually reported to us. No? So we just labeled them according to sa binigay, and then we will show you the methodology. No? So if you look at the percentages of those who signify their intent to vote in EAPPs, no? So it's just 8.7% as far as the PWDs are concerned, and then 3.7% as far as the senior citizens. No? So that leaves you mga, on both sectors, mga around 90+%, and that's very high. We're not saying that all those 90%, 90+% PWD and senior voters will have problems with accessibility, but the chances are very high. Kahit na 50 lang yan or even less, I think we still, as the experience have shown, no, mataas pa rin yung percentage nila who will encounter difficulties. And what is the reason for that? Kasi the Omnibus Election Code requires that we use public facilities for voting in general, no? I'm saying in general kasi the law says public, pero in reality, yung de facto is we are allowing private facilities also, no? But if more than half of your population is going to vote on one single day, then the only likely public facility that that can accommodate that volume of people would be schools, di ba? And most of them are built for young people, children in particular, no? So doon ngayon nagkakaroon ng problema because the ones who are voting are all 18 and up. And as we will see later on, a big percentage of them are senior citizens. A significant percentage of them are senior citizens. So they will definitely encounter problems, no? Kasi they're using facilities designed for children. All right. So based on COMELEC Resolution 10761, that was which was the EAPP resolution, no, pertaining to EAPPs, no, there were 2,107 voting centers with EAPPs, no. So if we look at the distribution, makikita nyo na NCR had the most with 635. If I'm not, the Cordillera Administrative Region, Calabarzon had 325, and then the rest, no. There are 17 regions in the country. This is just 13, no. So regions 1, 2, 3, and 12 do not have EAPPs, no. So we can compare that in 2019 and 2022, no. So there was an increase, no. So in 2019 it was around 800 plus, and it was increased to 2,107. So that's a very significant improvement, no. And if you will also notice, nagkaroon na ngayon sa Mindanao, no. So many of those na you will see in Zamboanga Peninsula, in Northern Mindanao, Davao Region, and also BARM, no. So they now have EAPPs. And I remember that one of the recommendations that we made in 2019 was to put up EAPPs in Mindanao dahil kasi it was a felt need, no, based on the report that we presented to the COMELEC, no. So we're happy to see that these are reflected, no. Now there are, again, as you can see, no, there are still 4 regions now without a single EAPP. Now, this may also hide another fact, no, that although there are some regions with EAPPs, some provinces within these regions have 0 EAPPs, no. Now, what's our methodology? This is very interesting. Kasi in 2019, we wanted to monitor, we partnered with the COMELEC na we will monitor EAPPs. Kaya lang na-realize namin wala pala kaming perang pang-monitor, no? And also, which was a good thing also, kasi election happens in one day, di ba? And if you recall, in 2019, EAPPs were only open until 2 p.m. So it opened at 6 and then closed at 2 p.m. That's just 8 hours. When you think about it, kahit na may pera ka, it's hard to field people all over the country. Hindi ka aabot, di ba? There's no way na unless you tap people already on site. And the fact that we didn't have any money, that's why we resorted to parang citizen reporting or journalism, no. So we used Google Forms to request people na can you help us monitor EAPPs in 2019, and that's what we did also in 2022. We just tweaked and improved yung survey para maging mas easily understandable, and that's how we were able to generate the reports that we have. It was all So if you ask us, ULAN, how much did you spend for the monitoring? Siguro hindi kami aabot ng 3,000 pesos for all of that, because syempre yung sweldo namin hindi kasali doon, baka sabihin nyo ano yan. But the direct costs as far as yung toll feed, because I went to Bulacan, si Malu, one of our staff in ULAN, siya yung pinakamagastos kasi nag-tricycle siya na nag-tricycle. And the reason for that is because that's the only way you can do that faster, yung mga angkas, ganyan, no? Some of the schools, wala namang ruta yan na diretso from one school to the other, no? So we were like using Google the whole time. So this is the form that we use, no? We explained what the survey is all about, both in Tagalog and in English, no? Yan. Tapos nakalagay dyan yung, basta we disclose everything, ganyan. And then we told them that no data will be taken in observance of the Data Privacy Act. And then the first question is about the location of the EAPP. That's why we also know where these are, no? So basically the question is, give us the name of the EAPP, and we gave the examples, no? Para lang it's easier. So for example, Kamuning High School, Sulat Central Elementary School, so on and so forth. And then requested for the name of the city or municipality, the province, no, if applicable. Kasi di ba there are major cities, yung independent cities that or chartered cities that although they are within a certain province pero hindi na kasali, no. That also includes the NCR cities, no. And then, as far as the region is concerned, there's a menu that comes out, and then you choose one, no. Ano yan? You just choose one, so it's easier for us to for uniformity purposes. Now, once you do that, and that's required, all of those questions you have to fill up. Kundi hindi ka makakasali, you won't proceed. We then proceeded to explain what an EAPP is, no. So nandiyan na yan. And then this time, this is our improvement. We showed pictures from the 2019 elections para there's no reason for you to be confused as to what an EAPP is, no? So we showed pictures doon sa survey, makikita mo yan, no? Di ba? So ganyan ang itsura niyan. They're all from the 2019 elections, no? Okay, and then the first question that will be asked is there an EAPP? So knowing what they should look like, it asks you, is there an EAPP in your voting centers? In your voting center. And then we even place a note that they're only open based on the resolution until 5 p.m. So if you're going to make a report na nagbumoto ka mga past 5 p.m., nag-pack up na yan. Baka hindi mo makita. And that also, kasi when the reports come in, there's a timestamp. So we would know if they say no, and then we look at the timestamp. If it's after 5 p.m., then we can validate na, okay, the reason why you didn't see one is because they've already closed, no? Hanggang 5 p.m. lang. And then, based on this question, if you answered yes, then it will branch off one direction. And then if you answer no, it will go to another direction, no? So yan yung decision tree dyan. So let's go with yes first, no? If you answered yes, then the survey will ask you to rate it from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. And then it also gives you a bit of a criteria na how you will gauge yung grading mo, no? So maybe the adequacy of the signages, the venue chosen, the availability of seats, sensitivity of the personnel. So yan lang yung mga examples para lang may idea sila how to grade the EAPP, no? And then it asks what is your reason for your rating. It's open-ended. And then it also asks how can the particular EAPP be further improved, kasi we're always looking towards improving yung EAPP, no? All right. And then this is a common portion, no? It then asks the reporter or the volunteer to attach photos. And Google allows that, eh. So they're allowed a maximum of 5 photos, and that's the reason why we have them. Kasi nung 2019 when we reported to COMELEC, parang there's a bit of ano ba yan? Yung how do you take this report, no? So hopefully with the pictures attached, then we can say na kung tama ba talaga yung ni-report o hindi. And then when we submit this to the COMELEC, they can also verify if the pictures do correspond to the actual. Kasi if I'm not mistaken, they also pass it on to the election officers and to the DESOs, no? So para bang they're also validating the outputs, no? All right. So now we go to the no. If you if you recall, the earlier question is there an EAPP? If you answered no, then the question now is, do you think it needs one based on COMELEC resolution 10761? No? So because 10761 says that if it's multi-level, if it's sloping, then you should have an EAPP. No? So it asks yes or no. And then meron nga magbra-branch. If you answered yes, then what's your reason? Because the voting center is multi-level. In other words, more than one story. No? Or if it's situated in an elevated or downward terrain, and then a third option that we placed is if the polling place is some distance from the main entrance. In other words, malaki yung voting center. And then, a fourth option is other, kung may maisip pa kayong dahilan kung bakit dapat may EAPP, no? Beyond yung 10761. And again, similar to the earlier one that we showed, no, kung nag-answer ka ng yes, we ask you to attach photos of the EAPP, of the voting center na walang EAPP that you said yes, it needs an EAPP. So again, that's why you were also able to see earlier in the video presentation some of those schools, voting centers in regions na alam nating walang EAPPs, and then still they think that it needs one. No? So there's visual proof on the day itself. No? Okay. Now, if you answered ito ngayon, so the next question is, ano yung comments and suggestions nila? No? Ito yung parang mini poll namin. It asks you, what are some of the things that you want in an EAPP to improve it? So, you can answer more than one. No? You can choose more than one. So, among them would be, put VCM in every EAPP, allow voting by assistors in EAPPs, allow early voting for PWDs and senior citizens, increase the number of EAPP support staff, allow mall voting, allow online voting, allow voting by mail, put up more EAPPs. There's also the option there's no need to do anything. It's perfect as it is. And then other. So kung may maisip ka lang, then we allow it, no? And then lastly, if you want us to be able to contact you, this is purely optional. Give us your contact details. It could be a phone number, it could be an email. No? So meron naman mga naglagay, and we were able to validate some of the reports or ask clarificatory questions if there was any. Now on top of that, yung paglagay po kasi ng pictures, it allows only those with Google accounts, yung Gmail, ganyan, no? And so for those without, yung mga Yahoo or whatever other service, then this thing comes up, no, that says, if you want to attach pictures, then you can just email it directly to us. That's our email, yung mailbox at ulan-ph.org. And then just put as subject the name of the voting center so that we know. So a number of the pictures also came this way, no? All right. And then we also did FGDs. We did 3, one in Quezon City, one in Baguio, and one in Malolos, Bulacan. So this was comprised of COMELEC personnel, the DESO, yung PPCRV in some, and then yung senior citizens, and also particularly in Baguio, yung IP representatives, and also PWDs, of course. No? Now, I'm going to present you the survey results. I just need to make a disclaimer that, these are volunteer reports. Hindi ito yung parang gospel truth na pagkahawakan nyo. No? So you have to take it constructively. This is immediate feedback. So far, we haven't noticed any, or we haven't seen any reason for some of the reporters to troll us or to parang distort the results. No? So these are done na parang part of their civic mindedness, ganyan, to help improve the system. A number of those who reported are probably by assistors na yung when you read their reasons, lalaging sasabihin, oh, because I was helping my parent or I was assisting my grandparent, ganyan. So just take note of that, no. And I think the what we need to do is to be able to extract as much parang lessons perhaps from these reports, no. All right. So what are the results? Number one, this time around we were able to generate 2,219 reports all over the country, no. We were able to cover all 17 regions, no. That's 100%. We were able to cover 61 provinces, that's 75%, and then 308 cities and municipalities, that's 18.8%. We were able to cover 1,326 voting centers, which is 3.6% of the total 37,000 plus voting centers. And then, what are the top regions? No, definitely NCR. Kasi yan naman yung pinaka-maraming at saka pinaka-savvy yung mga tao when it comes to the ganyan. And then, by the way, we spread yung link na yon to as many people you want. So kung kaibigan kita or naka-text tayo before, maski nga yung mga nanghaharas na yung, well, right now ngayon, hindi ba yung mga barahan, nakikita nyo ba yan? O kaya yung may trabaho ka. During that time, ito yung mga nag-o-offer ng trabaho eh. No? So, even those, pinadadalan ko ng link, sabi ko makabawi man lang ako sa inyo sa pang-troll nyo, di ba? Lahat ng maisip kong, yung mga ganon, pinagpapadalan ko ng link, and everyone na kahit na lahat basta pinadala namin, and then we posted in Facebook, in various social media accounts, no, of ULAN. We really tried to spread it as widely as possible. No? So NCR got the most with 890 for 366 voting centers. And then Central Luzon came in second. And then Calabarzon, Soc Sargent, surprisingly, kahit na wala silang EAPP, at saka Central Luzon nga pala. And also BARM. No? And for BARM, we have to thank PPCRV and MOSEP for helping us cover that area, no? Kasi mahirap pumasok sa BARM, to be honest, no? All right. What are the top provinces, no? Nueva Ecija, surprisingly, had 172 reports. Lahat sila sinasabi, wala kaming nakita, no? And then South Cot, another province na wala na naman. And then Rizal, meron yan. Bulacan, wala rin. And Batangas, wala rin yan. Yan yung isa sa mga, meron sa Calabarzon, but Batangas had 0 EAPPs. No? So, top cities, NCR lahat, if I'm not mistaken. Quezon City had the most with 250 reports. Manila came in second with 106. Makati, Marikina, and Parañaque. So as you can see, it's all Metro Manila. No? So, how many said na, based on all of that, 2,200 reports, no? How many said na kung nung na-observe nila, with EAPP ba or without? No? So these are the results. With EAPP, 846. Without EAPP, 1,373. So yan yung makikita yung graphic representation niya. No? So, which is normal because, I mean, there are only 2,107 EAPPs out of 37,000 plus. No? So, mas marami pang ang nakitang EAPP, hindi ba kung tutuusin? Kasi yung 2,107 out of, is just single digit lang yan. Ito parang almost, hindi ba? Parang 60. All right. And then the average rating, remember, 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, they gave it 3.8727%. So that's more than passing, di ba? Medyo mataas siya. Yan yung lahat ng may EAPP na nakita nila, no? Now, of course, we know where the real EAPPs are based on the COMELEC listing, no? So, and we also know that a number of those areas that they said na may EAPP, actually wala. No? So this 3.8727 all gives ratings to areas na wala naman talagang EAPP, no? So it's likely that they just thought that the service was really good, especially for senior citizens and PWD voters, and that they thought that they deserve a rating, no? Now, as far as the voting centers needing an EAPPs, let me just go back, no? So 1,373 ang walang EAPP dun sa aming 2,200, no? Now, sabi nila, 765 of that 1,300 need an EAPP. 573 not needed. And then, mga walang sagot, 35. I don't know why. So, kung titignan nyo, more than half of those without EAPP said that we need an EAPP. No? And then, slightly less yung not needed. Ito yung siguro yung talagang, kasi alam naman natin in the provinces, karamihan dyan, single story, ganyan. Now, and then yung walang answer is 35, no? Why is it needed, no? Let me go back. So kapag inad nyo yan, 1,300 plus yan. No? Magtatali. Alright? And when you ask the 765, why is an EAPP needed in your voting center? Ito yung mga sagot nila. 399 said, because it's multi-level. And then 268 said because it's sloping. And then yung distance, yung layo niya, is 403. Yun yung pinakamalaki actually. And by the way, that question pala allows you to choose more than one. Kaya hindi magtatali yun sa 500, no? Sabi niyo, bakit parang ang dami na? Because you can choose, di ba merong mga areas na multi-level na, sloping pa, at napakalawak. Di ba? May mga ganon. The other reasons is 101. So graphically, yan yung representation niya. So distance had the most. Parang very slim margin lang yung distance and multi-level. And yung other reasons, they said other types of inaccessibility like the unpaved roads. Nakita nyo naman, di ba? Yung some areas had gravel na ganyan or kasi sometimes you also have to be very sensitive. Akala mo everything is parang flat, but just put 2 or 3 steps. That's going to be very difficult already for some seniors and those using wheelchairs. No. Others said na because it was very disorganized, so you really need an EAPP for senior citizens. No. And PWDs. Some said they have no suitable waiting area. And remember, elections happen at the height of summer. No? So talagang kung mainit yan, and then you see, I think, I was the one who took the picture in Tuktukan. Nakikita mo, talagang umabot siya on the main road. No? I think it's Maharlika Highway. I remember I was just amazed na that the line was stretching that long and it was 2 already in the afternoon. And I could feel what they're going through because I remember whenever I would stop at a voting center and then look for the EAPP, I myself was wobbling from the heat, no. So some said there were areas that were flooded. Some said that some areas were unsafe or had poor facilities, and then it was just too crowded, and then yung mga 1 or 2 reasons, yan na lang yung others. No? So mga very minimal, we did not enumerate. So if we break down into the different regions na kung saan sinabi nila we need EAPPs, then that's the breakdown. No? So NCR with already so many 600 plus EAPPs, meron pa rin daw some areas that they said now we still need EAPPs. If you noticed, I think the highest here is Central Luzon because wala talagang EAPPs. And it was fairly represented because next to NCR, Central Luzon was our highest, next highest region with reports. No? Now, if you notice, paano yan? Ang galing ng Caraga, wala. Iisa lang. Kasi in Caraga, we only had 2 reports. So, yung one na yan, the fact na nakaisa siya, 50% pa rin yun. Ano? So, maybe they should consider. No? Okay, now, if we compare the survey that we did to the official COMELEC list, remember I was telling you, there is an official list na 2,107 EAPPs. 433 official EAPPs were covered. So we were able to visit 20.6% or 1 in every 5. Di ba? Marami yun. With 859 reports all in all. And then, 302 of these 433 EAPPs were validated to have EAPPs. So our volunteer reporters were able to visit them and actually see the EAPPs based on 609 reports. No? So that's good, hindi ba? Now, these are the suggested improvements from the people who gave us the reports. No? So sabi nila, separate rooms for EAPPs. I think there were some areas that combined the IPPs, the isolation polling place, which is unique to these elections because of the pandemic, with the EAPPs. No? And then use accessible rooms, no, and locations. Kasi some of the rooms, although they were designated as EAPPs, were not accessible, no, or not too near the entrance, no. And then put up more EAPPs. Sinabi na ni Chair yan kanina na that has an implication as far as the budget is concerned. And then improve it further, no? So provide adult seating, for instance, provisions for drinking water. Again, it's a very hot day. Snacks, cleaner toilets, ventilation. We know this, no, yung cleaner toilets na yan. Kasi again, pag pumunta ka sa mga grade school, especially for the guys, di ba, sa pader ka lang umiihi, di ba? Tapos yung sa mga, sa mga pambabae naman, these are for girls, and then, minsan, walang janitor that day. So, kasi nga may budget na naman requirement yan. Ano? So I think that's a problem that is constantly raised. No? And then if you recall, given the volume of people who voted for these elections and the hours that they spent, dadating ka sa punto na you need to use the toilet. No? All right. More visible and larger signages and directions. I think we were able to document some of the signages na bond paper lang. And then more trained personnel, more wheelchairs and seats, better information dissemination on EAPP facilities. Apparently, some seniors and PWDs only learned about the EAPP on that day. No, so parang pagkatas nila umakyat, tsaka nila nalaman, ay may EAPP pala. No? At least na ganun ko sa VCM yung boto ko. No? Better selection of EAPP support staff. Put VCM in EAPPs. Put roving EAPP support staff or marshals. More trainings, more ramps, and lest it be lost in all of this, ang daming nagsabing keep up the good work. Again, remember, the rating is quite high. So, there were some who took the time to say na no improvement needed because they're really doing a good job already. No? So, kudos to COMELEC for that. No? As far as the mini poll is concerned, we're now ranking this according to the number of yung votes. No? So, early voting got the most number of votes. No? Followed by putting up more EAPPs, Third would be more support staff. Fourth is VCM in EAPPs, mall voting, online voting, voting by assistors, voting by mail. Konti lang yun nan. Yung others, ito yung naglagay pa sila na uh, ano yan, parang one or two na nothing in in particular, no. Now, by the way, if you want a copy of this yung and all the presentations, just email us at mailbox@ulan-ph.org, no. So we can put you in yung sa Google Drive. We will put them all in a Google Drive and share them with you. Kasi nga, ULAN is an environmental NGO. So even yung paggamit namin ng papel, inaano na, minimize, no? Alright. As far as the consultations are concerned, we group them according to the different people na represented. So yung PWD and senior voter experience, these are their sentiments, no, from that small group that we invited, no. Some said na many PWD and SC voters were reassigned in upper floors. Alam naman natin na nagkaroon ng reclustering during these elections because the number of voters per precinct was reduced from 1,000 per polling place to 800, di ba? So naturally, 200 in every polling place were reassigned to different polling places, no? So one in every 5, no? Mari-reshuffle ka, no? So what happened is some were surprised na why were they reassigned in upper floors. In fact, this was the experience of my neighbor who lives directly across where I live, no? And she voted for the first time and she's already 70 plus. For the very first time. I remember helping her fill up the application for registration. Eh. And on the other hand, kaya ko siya naisabay because I transferred already to a different district in Quezon City, no? So sinabay ko na siya dahil I know na she wanted to vote especially for these elections, no? Okay. I'm sorry, we did that in 2019, no? This time around, na-reassign ako sa second floor and then she was reassigned to the fourth floor and magkaiba kami ng building. And we don't understand ano yung rhyme or reason for that, no? Why? We know that there was reclustering, pero bakit katapat ko siya na ano kami, magkahiwalay pa kami. And she's complaining dahil sabi ko, sorry Tita Flor, ako nasa second floor, ikaw nasa fourth floor. And I remember as a service to my community, I went to our voting center the Sunday before elections, took a picture of the plan with the different precincts, and then sent it via Viber to the community chat, no? Para people would know where to go. And then pag doon namin alam, no, na why we were where we were assigned. So kasi sabi ko kapag pipila pa kayo and then tatanungin niyo pa kung saan kayo boboto, matagal yan. What you need to do is get your temperature check. Kung pwede, dalhin niyo na yung sarili niyong thermometer at barilin niyo sarili niyo at ipakita, and then go straight to your polling place, no? And you don't need to wait for to line up to the volunteer assistance desk kasi baka matagal yon, no? And then some said that they signified already their intention to vote in an EAPP or the accessible polling place. In other words, they already said that in their registration beforehand, but they were still assigned to upper floors during the reclustering. So they kami rin nagtaka dahil kasi nga, di ba, we know that pag nag-APP ka, lagi ka na dapat sa ground floor, no? And then, there was confusion over EAPP and APP signages, no? Now, why, as far as our survey was concerned, we attribute this as one of the problems why some areas said that they thought that they were in EAPPs when in reality, APP signage yung nakita nila. And you saw that, di ba? Merong mga sa video, may mga APP and then may mga EAPP. why is there a material difference? In an EAPP, any senior citizen na hindi kaya register sa APP can vote there. Pero hindi sila walang VCM, ganyan. Pero in an APP or an accessible polling place, only those senior citizens who signify their intention can vote. Hindi yung mga hindi na ginawa nila, yung kumbaga naka-assign yan per classroom, no? So, if you're a senior citizen and you thought na, ito yung pang senior, may signage ganyan. Yung pala malalaman nila hindi ka dyan dahil kasi you should look for your own polling place because you did not signify. It could be confusing, no? And I think that was the experience of some of those that we interviewed. Now, this one was nagalit pa yan during the consultation. He's a PWD voter who was presumed to be an illiterate. Parang inassume lang kaagad. And he was fuming because first, he is the PDAW of their city. He's a PWD Affairs Officer. Kumbaga sa senior citizen, di ba may OSCA? Siya yung head ng sa PWD. And he was saying, I have a PhD. Bakit ako automatic na presume na illiterate? Simply because I have a disability. No? So, nagalit siya dyan. I remember him. And we allowed that person to really vent because we know how insulting it was. No? And it's a major city up north. No? Lack of information on EAPP. So again, I think I already explained this na they didn't know about the concept. Voting in EAPPs took long to finish. And we know this, no? In 2019, matagal na talaga yan. Tapos, I think continually matagal rin, even up to now. Although I think with more staff, and by the way, there were improvements in the new resolution. Kunyari, makukuha mo na yung waiver ahead of time, ganyan. It still took long, no? And then there was a question on the ethnicity which was deemed offensive. And the ones who said na they were offended are both IPs and non-IP alike. No? So sabi niya nung IP, nung tinanong siya, are you an IP? Na-offend siya. Bakit mo tinatanong? What's the purpose of this? No? And then, as it turned out, another voter said, ba't nyo nga tinatanong? Dahil tinanong din siya kung IP pa siya, bakit pa ako pinagkakamalang IP? Ganyan, di ba? No? So all this happened in Baguio, by the way. No? Because, and I think COMELEC's purpose was to get their statistics, but they didn't see any reason and why it was important that their ethnicity was being questioned. No? So parang hindi nila mag-get bakit mo tatanungin kung if you're an IP or not. So maybe that needs to be explained. And then, some were prioritized upon entry. Di ba? Alam naman natin, based, if you recall your May experience, that there's a long queue just getting in because of they needed to measure your because of the temperature checks. But in this case, once they got in, they didn't know where to go next. Kasi nga, di ba, you need to know your polling place, yung precinct number mo, kung saan ka na-reassign. And then, some EAPPs were turned into an information desk, resulting in delays. Kasi nga, nasa bungad sila. Yun namang DESO experience, these are the people from DepEd, yung mga principals who sort of acted like the floor managers of the whole voting center. Ang sabi nila, their EAPP support staff were literally exhausted in that exercise. Kasi nga, runners yan effectively, balik-balik, no? And then, there was one area with an issue over the requirement to photocopy the senior citizen and PWD ID prior to voting in the EAPP. I don't think that's a requirement, pero that was required in that particular voting center. And then, EAPP training via Facebook was not very effective daw, sabi nila, no? No ID for some of the EAPP support staff, and then some EAPP facilities were not suitable for PWD and SE voters. No? And then the IPP was not utilized. I went around, I think mga around 13 voting centers in Bulacan, and I also didn't see, parang nakita ko lang doon most of the health staff, no? And then EAPP support staff coordinated with DESO only on the day of the elections, no? So sabi nila parang it was too late, no? So as far as those from the COMELEC who attended us, they said that there was a late distribution of EAPP kits, signages, and IDs, short notices for the FB training on EAPPs, FB training not as effective as face-to-face, so they're similar with the DESO. And then they established EAPPs, but there was no allocation daw. And then our observations, as far as I think I already explained this, there was a discrepancy between reports and the COMELEC data on where the EAPPs are. We think the problem is with signages. There was a confusion with the APPs with EAPPs, and then some reports. But we also noticed that there were some EAPPs na nakalista sa COMELEC, but consistently, all the reports that we received said, from different sources said, walang EAPP silang nakita. Maybe that's because of the signages, no? Kung hindi umabot or hindi dumating. And then some voting centers, even without EAPP, provided excellent assistance to PWD and senior citizen voters that they thought that they were in EAPPs, no? All right. And then IPPs were everywhere and sometimes better located than EAPPs, no? IPPs again are the isolation polling places. As far as the overall rating, when we looked into their reasons, no, so we can categorize them into the attitudinal reasons, basically how the staff related to them, and I think that's the one that carries the day most of the time. Yung parang because the EAPP support staff were very sensitive. It's the reason na why sometimes we know naman yung mga shortcomings in these areas. Nonetheless, they're overlooked because of the very positive attitude of the support staff, no? The venue, ito yung minsan yung naglagay kayo dito ng EAPP, pero bakit nasa ganitong lugar, no? And then the process. I think this is the one that is the source of what brings the grade down, because at the end of the day, they want to vote in VCMs. Yun yung gusto ng senior and PWDs, the experience of actually inserting the So, and then plus the fact that it really takes longer. Kasi may runner di ba? Dadalhin yung boto mo, tapos babalik, ang dami-dami nyo, walang priority, ganyan. And then at the end of the day, you will not be able to insert. So if there's one category that brings down the grades, it's this one, no? As opposed to the attitudinal, no? It's the one that pulls up the grade. And then yung accessibility, may areas na not very accessible, but many of the areas chosen had really good facilities, no? And then the add-ons. Ito, they tend to pull up the grade kasi yan yung mga minsan may tubig, or the air conditioning, yung they chose an area na may air conditioning. So it's always voter center specific, no? So I think although makikita niyo yung average grade, at the end of the day, ang suggestion ko is to look into the comments for every voting center. Kasi doon niyo makikita yung where the areas for improvement are. And also, in some voting areas na very high ang grade nila, maybe this could serve as models, no, for the other voting centers. Kasi I know for a fact that many principals ganyan go out of their way to really make their voting experience of seniors and PWDs really good. Why? Because they themselves usually are nearing that age, hindi ba? So parang rin yan. And also, I think, alam naman natin in Filipino culture how much we regard our senior citizens in particular, no? So yung grade ngayon, dun sa actual na may mga EAPPs, it's 3.8966. Okay? So mataas again. Ito lang yung dyan. Kasi nung 2019, it's 4.0038. So went down by a very, very small amount, no? Preferably sana it inches its way up rather than go down, no? Okay. So sabi ko nga, at the end of the day, it's the staff, yung mga people na who help the PWDs and senior citizens when they rise to the occasion, kaya tumataas, no? Here are our recommendations. EAPPs, the accessible polling places, should serve as the backbone of PWD and senior citizen voting, not EAPPs. As the name suggests, emergency lang yan. Hindi yan yung mainstay, no? So, what should COMELEC do? Increase APP registration, yung 3 point something na yan, or ano yun, basta single digit. Gawin yung 20, gawin yung 50, ganyan. Kailangan you go on a massive information dissemination campaign that you update your registration and that you vote in APPs. Ganyan, no? Of course, it's going to be very difficult. And I remember particularly between 2019 and 2022, why it was difficult, why the registration period was limited, was because of the pandemic and also because of the repeated deferment of the barangay elections, di ba? Nakailan yan. And whenever you have barangay elections na lalagay mo dyan, nagsasara yung registration period, di ba? Sa COMELEC, so many days before, then popostpone pala, ililipat ng February, tas magsasarado na naman yung registration. And then only to be postponed anew, no? So, particularly during that period, I think it's very limited, especially nung nag-reopen na, suddenly so many people wanted to register na first-timers. And then so updating and signifying their intention probably was not a good plan. Dahil by then, hindi ba, nag-aano pa? Although they have priority, everywhere, every time you read in the news, it's like very busy and hectic yung registration na yan. Ano? Now, our suggestion, ULAN suggestion is recluster all PWDs and senior citizens to polling places located to the ground. Ibaba nyo na lang lahat. Nire-recluster nyo rin naman kami, di ba? Kung saan-saan, sa third floor, second floor. But di nyo na lang ibaba lahat ng senior and PWDs, no? It's equivalent to putting VCMs in EAPP. So in other words, ibaba nyo na lang lahat, no? Now, I think logistically it can be done. Hindi naman ganun kahirap yan. And our reasons, number one, the voting population grew only by 6.31% between 2019 and 2022, from 61 million to 65.7, 61.8 to 65.7. But the PWD and SC voting population, as far as our data is concerned, grew by 25.2. Ang laki, no? Malaki yung ano. And you know, the PWD population, as far as we're concerned, is an underestimation of the real voting population ng PWDs. No? So, the more na mag-register pa sila, we'd see bigger increases. No? Now, PWD and SC as a percentage of the total voting population na local grew from 13 points. So, noon dati, 13.68% lang ng total population ang PWDs. Now, it's already 16.1%. No? So, it grew by 2.44%. In simpler terms, roughly 1 in every 7 voter is a senior citizen or PWD voter. And that's spread all over the country. So, kada polling place, there are 800 voters. So, 1 in every 7 of that would be senior citizens primarily. No? So keep that in mind. So probably the only objection na lang, kasi it can be done naman, is legal. No? Because RA 10366 says that they must signify their intent to avail of the right to a separate precinct during registration. No? Okay. So establish at least 1 precinct in every voting center. Pero our interpretation naman is it refers to precincts of a non-territorial nature. Okay? Now, if you retain your precinct, ni-recluster ka lang, you're not in a non-territorial precinct, you still retain your old precinct. So that should not apply. That's our legal interpretation. Pero hindi namin yan makikipagpatayan because of that. No? If COMELEC thinks that you still need to register, then by all means do that. Just increase the number from single percentage to maybe 20, 30 percent, no, para dumami, no. Now, we also think that as far as PWDs as senior citizens, accessible polling places is a matter of right, no. You see that in BP 344 or the accessibility law. You also see that in the Magna Carta for PWDs, which talks about barrier-free environment. It has a specific section in the Magna Carta that says polling places should be made accessible to persons with disabilities. This is also reiterated in the Senior Citizen Act as amended, and also in RA 10366, the right to accessible voting procedures, facilities, and materials to senior citizens. So I think it should be done. Kasi right now, ang nangyari noong 2016, if I can recall, sabi nila, ayaw namin, or 2013, ayaw namin ng EAPP because magkakasama kami, mawawalan ng priority. But that's wrong, di ba? We have to counter that misinformation. And then, so what COMELEC did is, pag nag-signify ka ng EAPP, para meron ka pa ring sense of priority, isasama sa'yo yung non-senior or non-PWD para magkakasama kayo sa EAPP. So that pag dumating yung senior, may priority pa rin siya kasi may kasama siyang non-senior and non-PWD. Tama ba yun? But did those non-PWD or non-senior citizens signify their intent na gusto nilang ibaba? They did not. Diba? So it's surprising na bakit ang senior, pahihirapan nyo mag-signify, pero mga kasama niya sa precinct, na ibababa nyo na without signifying their intent. Di ba parang, bakit ginawa nyong burdensome yung pag-exercise ng right to an accessible polling place? No? So improving, but nonetheless, if you are going to go with the status quo, might as well improve yung EAPPs. Number one is require EAPPs in all regions, provinces, and major cities. That the fact that we have 4 regions without EAPPs is a bit hard to understand considering na they're in every region and every, sabi ko nga 1 in 7 voter di ba? And then even in some regions with EAPPs, there are those without provinces na walang EAPPs like in Batangas, no? So I think not only in every region but in every province, no? And major city. Kasi sa major cities, nandyan yung mga multi-level voting centers. Include as an additional criteria, hindi ba remember multi-level and also sloping? I think you should also consider the size. I remember going to one voting center in Bulacan. Nagulat ako, merong track oval pala sa loob. And the entrance is in the middle. So kung kumaliwa ka, yung pala dapat kumanan ka, then you practically walk the length of the oval. No? And remember, this again, so kapag sinasabi na, hindi single story sa probinsya, but in the provinces, malalawak ang mga voting centers, hindi po ba? And then sa Manila naman, up and down, ang daming mga as given the limited space, yung mga ginagawa ng new buildings, so on and so forth. So akyat baba yung mga senior citizen. And then ensure accessibility, improve the visibility of the signages. Dahil nga kasi nakita natin, sabi nga some were late and then some you just used bond paper. More intensive information dissemination on EAPP as an option, no? If it's available. And then always strive for improved voter experience like providing for drinking facilities, better ventilation, ganyan. And then ito may budget may budget implication, increase the number of EAPP support staff. Now, to the credit of COMELEC, they increased the number. At least 3 na yata or 2 ba kada voting center? 3 ba? 3, yeah. So, nadagdagan na yan as we speak. Kaya nga parang sinasabi ko yung may nagsabi na matagal daw yung process. Actually, napabilis yan because of the increased number of EAPP support staff, particularly for these elections. Improve the training for EAPP support staff kasi nga parang ang nangyari daw Facebook lang. But again, I think the pandemic had something to do with this dahil Comelec was trying to di ba, especially remember yung January was the time that there was a surge in the Omicron virus. So I think they were trying to prevent yung trainings from being the source of an outbreak, no? Allow assessors to vote in EAPPs. Now, as an anecdote, this is happening de facto in some voting centers. Ni-report sa amin na although hindi dapat, they realize na alam nga naman iwan yung senior, no? So binigyan din sila ng authorization, and the machine wouldn't know if you're a senior citizen or an assistor. So this was allowed in some voting centers, no? Conduct pre-election inspection of EAPP facilities para lang masigurado na talagang accessible sila. Introduce the EAPP support staff to the DESO and EB members beforehand, no? So I don't know how the hiring happened, but they were saying that dapat mag-coordinate because in one instance na sa FGD namin parang nag-aaway sila eh. And then these are suggestions. Explore the possibility of renaming EAPPs. Kasi nga sabi nila, di ba may APP, may EAPP, may IPP, may SEAPP. Minsan di ba nakakabulol? Ako ang suggestion ko is Senior PWD Pregnant Accessibility Center. Space. Na double P. Space. Ganyan. Senior PWD Accessibility Centers. No? So, para lang maiba. Kasi nakakabulol eh. Di ba? Sabi nyo, hindi, kaya nga kami nag-EAPP. Oo. Sa Comelec. Pero pag nakita mo yung signages na may tuldok-tuldok, EAPP, may mag-EAPP. Di ba? So, ano tawag niyo sa APP? App? Di ba? So, kung kayo lang nag-uusap, alam niyo na, no? But for the public, it could be different. No? May EAPP, may EAPP, EAPP. So ako, sa akin, suggestion ko is explore at saka hindi naman emergency. Parang nasa isip natin, may inaatake sa puso, doon ka boboto, no? Alam namin yung dahilan kung ba't siya ginawang emergency, no? So I think ito na yung malapit na I'm nearing, no? Yung early voting is also something that we're pushing. But we are suggesting that we studied how it's going to be operationalized. Kasi it's going to be very costly if we're going to do it the same way that we're doing it right now. Yung kung ililipat mo lang, ay ba, di-doble gastos mo. Dahil lahat yan lalagyan mo ng electoral board. Baka maglagay ka pa ng EAPP or EAPP. Hindi ba? Dodoble lang ang gastos mo. Triple pa nga if you're going to do it in multiple days. No? So you have to, ang suggestion namin is you should pilot test, ganyan. And introduce innovations. Maybe you can already, dun mo gagamitin ngayon non-territorial. So regardless of where you are in Quezon City, you can vote. In anywhere, no? So probably, dyan mo na ipapasok yung mga VCM, dyan mo na ipapasok yung mga mall voting, so on and so forth. Tapos maybe you can use smaller ballots, no? Kasi ang reklamo nila, ang haba na, ang liliit pa ng mga letra, and we all know the reason why. Because of the party list, di ba? Yung ang haba-haba, kaya ngayon, yun na yung pinakamaliit na pwede, no? Pero it's hard for them to read and mark it. So yan nga, nabanggit ko na yung non-territorial, explore mall voting or voting in more accessible facilities, a more accessible ballot design perhaps. But this is what they always ask, ensure voting for local officials. No, they hate the idea of local absentee voting, that you cannot vote for local officials. Why? Because their benefits come from the LGU. So nililigawan sila ng LGU. If they no longer vote for them, then baka mawala ng budget ang OSCA and PIDAO. No? So this is very critical as far as they're concerned. So the idea of local absentee voting na walang local voting is anathema to them. No? And then heavy information dissemination, especially on the need to update one's registration. That if you want to avail of early voting, you have to register. Diyan ako totally agree because magiging iba yung voting day mo, magiging iba yung if ever na mag non-territorial kayo. What are other recommendations for the COMELEC? Please resolve the issues in the VSO. It's supposed to be your solution. And the solution should not be the problem. Hindi ba? Tawag di dyan iatrogenesis, the solution being the problem. So we don't know why, but we're looking from the outside looking in. There was a change of leadership multiple times in just a few months. I think that's indicative. No? So we don't know anything else, but we think that that's a problem. But we're happy that si Ared Vecino is now the head because we've worked with him in 2016 pa, di ba? 19, okay. So as early as 29. And we're happy kasi in 2019 we didn't have that many problems. No? In fact, it was very smooth sailing. No? So we thought that it's, yung momentum niya is on an upward trajectory. No? But nagtaka kami bakit biglang suddenly we're not having problems. And then also address data gathering and collection problems. The fact that kami ni Ared Vecino, magkaibang figures namin, I think that's indicative that there is a data problem at the moment. Third, explore the possibility, ito suggestion lang na Ulan, explore the possibility of using a separate sheet. Or maybe you test the online voting for the party list system. It's to make the ballot more readable for PWDs and seniors. Tipid pa siguro sa papel kasi kapag gusto mo mag-party list, hingi ka na lang, pero kung ayaw mo, you know naman how many votes were cast for party list. How many? 1 million? More. Out of 60 plus or 50 plus million. So nakatipid kayo ng 49 million sheets. No? And then, hindi na sila magsisiksikan dun sa balota, dun sa ballot box because hindi na kanyang kalalaki yung mga ballots ninyo. No? And then, increase the voting centers. No? Kasi with our population growing every 3 years, and then hindi nyo dinadamihan yung voting centers, talagang the problems will just be aggravated. It's just a numbers game. Padami tayo ng padami, but the facilities that we're using are not growing as fast. No? So probably for me or for Ulan, we tap even private establishments, which is happening already. No? So maybe we increase the number yung mga subdivisions. And by the way, if the reason then why and then we're also pushing this, no, that maybe we really need to use private establishments. Kasi if you read the Omnibus Election Code, the reason why public established facilities are used is to prevent partisanship, di ba? Or allowing private interest to influence elections. Pero pumunta ka in any public school, congratulations, graduate from ganyan. Ang daming nakasampay. The building is named after a politician, especially mga buhay pa. And luckily, hindi tumakbo si Ate V. Dahil di ba may Vilma Santos type building sa Lipa, if I'm not mistaken, no? Ano yun? Di ba? Pagpasok mo pa lang, meron ng pangalan eh. So, I'd rather, kung gawin mo yan sa SM, tignan natin kung makapagpaskill dun yung mga or Robinsons, di ba? Kung makapagpaskill dun yung mga local politicians, maybe. But so far, I haven't been able to see any. No? Yung mga, if ever makikita mo lang dun, even yung mga kainan, I think we should do away with that. Alam naman natin, paglabas mo, minsan nga nasa loob, may nagbebenta pa ng mga pagkain. And that's very understandable because we're making them wait for hours, di ba? Kung ako nga magnenegosyo, malinis na toilet, piso kada di ba? Yung ganyan, maglalagay ako, no? Sa dami ng mga taong not piso, 5 pesos pala. Tapos yung may wipes, siguro 10 pesos, no? Other recommendations for the DOH. Continue providing medical assistance in voting centers. For the DPWH, please ensure the accessibility of voting centers before the start of the election ban. For the DILG, dahil nandito si Yusek Llamas, ensure the availability of transportation during elections. I think that's also included in the bill of in some of the bills, no? And then we know that the COMELEC has a hard time doing this kasi kapag when you go, especially go to the provinces, it's usually just the election officer and one assistant, no? So assist in the validation of the voting centers vis-a-vis the need for an EAPPs in every LGU. And I think that's where the barangays can come in. They can do this beforehand and then say na if it's multi-level or not. So I think the COMELEC would be able to get that information and then determine the planning of EAPP. Sabi naman ni Chair, he's willing to support it if the Congress will also support the same. And then strengthen the OSCAs and PIDAOs and focal persons because they're the ones that sort of feed the information on EAPPs to their constituents, no? And then for the DepEd and CHED, and we're happy that the Vice President welcomes this initiative, no? Our suggestion is, remember the school calendar shifted. So now, ang election week is a school week, di ba? Except for that one day. And we're suggesting that, and that has affected the volunteers. So we're suggesting that maybe they should encourage youth volunteers during elections by crediting their work as extracurricular activity or kung ano man yun na pwedeng gamitin. Or maybe create a school holiday for that week so that the students can participate, no? Para maraming mga youth volunteers. For Congress, pass the law on early voting for PWD and senior citizens and voters, including possibilities for online voting, voting in malls, voting in more accessible private establishments. For the PPCRV, reintegrate training on EAPP voting for their volunteers. No, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Ayun po. Thank you po, Attorney Ron, for the very comprehensive EAP monitoring report po. Ngayon po, ang message to our online attendees. Pasensya na po, I regret to inform you na overflowing na po yung Zoom natin. Pero don't worry po, for those na hindi na po makapasok sa Zoom meeting po natin, our Facebook page po is also hosting a live stream of our current events. Hanapin nyo lang po sa Facebook, Upholding Life and Nature at may live stream po doon. Now, onwards po, to lead us po as we digest our insights, our comments, and even questions po, our reactions po sa lahat ng nag-present sa atin today po. Let us present our first panel reactor po. She is a holder of a psychology degree from UP Diliman and a Juris Doctor degree from Ateneo Law. She is also a human rights advocate and a member of the Ateneo Human Rights Center. She is also credited as a writer and researcher in an internationally published book on human trafficking commissioned by the United Nations. She is also an experienced litigator from leading private law firms, introducing the National Council on Disability Affairs Chief Planning Officer and Head of the Programs Management Division. Please give a warm applause to Attorney Realet Rizel Ramos.
There I go. Hello. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I won't keep this long since I know it's lunchtime. And sorry I brought my laptop with me because I was actually taking notes while the presenters were, giving their presentation. So first, I would like to recognize the presence of Yusek Llamas. Thank you so much for gracing this event. And of course, to my former professor in Ateneo Law, Attorney Ron Gutierrez, who also happened to be a panelist in my thesis defense. So hearing him talk a while ago, triggered memories of thesis defense in law school. Anyway, thank you so much, Sir Ron, and to ULAN for organizing this activity. So to start off, I really think this is very timely. Let me just share a recent activity I attended. So on behalf of NCDA, I was invited by NEDA to attend the first ever SDG Summit here in the Philippines. So in that SDG Summit, it was just held last week. we discussed where we are right now in the Philippines in terms of the realization of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And persons with disabilities are mentioned several times in the SDGs. And right now it's very crucial kasi we are on our year 7, almost year 8. So it started in 2015 and the goals are intended to be reached or hope to be reached by 2030. So roughly we only have 8 years left. And well, of course, I won't go into detail into the 17 SDGs, no. But I think the more important thing to emphasize is the general principle of leaving no one behind, which is why again I thank ULAN for this opportunity because this is really in line with that principle of leaving no one behind. So it is in this context that their participation in elections are all the more crucial. I mean, in the context of SDGs and the participation of persons with disabilities, because the very people that they will elect or put into power are also the people who are the principal duty bearers in ensuring that the SDGs are realized. So from the perspective of NCDA, I won't go so much into detail about the election laws. I will leave that to the expertise of our colleagues from COMELEC. But I would, I guess, just want to emphasize the importance on the enforcement and promotion of rights of persons with disabilities. As we know, the rights of persons with disabilities when it comes to voting is enshrined in no less than our Philippine Constitution. Section 5 of the Philippine Constitution specifically provides that there should be a system wherein persons with disability can vote. Actually, the goal really is for them to no longer need assistance, and that is where accessibility or provisions for accessibility really come in. Other than that, we also have international commitments. On a more general aspect, we have Article 21 of the UDHR and Article 25 of the ICCPR. This pertains to participation in civil and political rights. But on a more particular note, we have Article 29 of the UNCRPD. This pertains to the participation of PWDs in political and public life. And on that note, I would like to congratulate COMELEC because I think naman that the Philippines is compliant with the provisions in Article 29 of the UNCRPD. I won't go into detail dun sa ano yung mga nakalist na rights doon, but essentially, we can group them into two. First, to allow persons with disability to exercise their right to vote, and then at the same time, for them to, sorry, hiningal ako, parang amaze ko pala magsalita. For them to exercise their right to vote, and second, for them to be in a position where they themselves can run for office. And in our most recent elections, we've seen that. We've seen COMELEC resolutions to ensure that our persons with disability really get to participate in the voting process. And on the other aspect naman, we've seen persons with disability run for high-ranking positions. There was a person with disability who ran for Senate. There was a former COMELEC commissioner who really campaigned for a party list for persons specifically advocating for the rights of persons with disability. So on that note, that's good because I think by June 2023, we will be undergoing review when it comes to the implementation of UNCRPD. So at least on the aspect of the exercise of right to suffrage of persons with disability, we have something good to report to the international community. So, okay, so let me now go into my comments with regard to the presentations a while ago. First, I would just like to share that it was music to my ears earlier on when COMELEC Chair Garcia started his message by saying that the vulnerable sectors are at the heart and soul of their planned reform agenda for COMELEC. And with regard to the plea for support when it comes to budget, definitely you can count on NCDA to support that. Now, okay, with regard to the numbers, Attorney Ron a while ago mentioned na I think there is an issue nga dun sa pagkakaiba-iba ng data. Actually, with NCDA, we also have a different data. Right now, the most updated is that there are 764,677 persons with disability. But of course, these are PWDs in general. These are not the registered voters per se. But siguro what I can commit is that definitely we can work hand in hand with ULAN and also with the VSO kasi the National Registry for Persons with Disability is lodged in the system of the DOH. However, we at NCDA, we do have access. We have a mirror link to that. So actually every day tumataas siya, dumadami siya, and we are updated. So if you want more updated data, kunwari ko i-contextualize ilang percentage ng persons with disability of voting age ang registered with the COMELEC system, then we can work with you on that po. So, okay. Regarding the top provinces and cities, kanina Attorney Ron was presenting, no, I think one of the top provinces are Bulacan and Nueva Ecija. And I checked our database because our database is actually disaggregated not just on sex, but also on the 10 types of disability. And then on age and region, geographical representation. So when I cross-check yung mga top provinces, actually, apat dun sa limang kaninang lumabas, are from Region 2, Region 3 and Region 4. So Bulacan, Nueva Ecija, I think Rizal and Batangas. And Region 3 and Region 4 are some of the top provinces with the most number of persons with disability as far as our data is concerned. So at least we can say na hindi man eksakto yung numbers, medyo may convergence naman ng data. Also, with regard to the cities, yes, it makes sense that the top cities are all from NCR. Kasi overall, sa buong Pilipinas, the most number of registered persons with disabilities come from the NCR. Although, on this note, I would like to second yung sinabi rin kanina ni Attorney Ron na underrepresented definitely yung actual number of persons with disability dun sa nasa system natin. Which brings me to, I think, one of our recommendations. No, I suppose perhaps from this point we can work closely. We can explore the possibility of how we can maximize yung mga PDAOs in the different localities. Because just let me give you a background on why we are sure na mas marami yung totoong number ng PWDs dun sa national data. So, PWDs, they apply for, well, an ID and they are recognized as a PWD through LGUs. Not through any national body like the NCDA, but through the LGUs, like for example, yung PDAO. Now, for them to be part of the PRPWD, which is our national registry for persons with disabilities, the PDAOs have to upload the data online. So, sometimes, well, not sometimes, but most of the time, nagkakaroon ng lag due to, well, several factors. One of which is that, una, hindi lahat ng local government units have PDAOs. So this is something that we are trying to work with BILG to really push for local government units to have PDAOs in their respective LGUs. Second, yung iba naman, kulang sila sa facilities. That's why hindi na-upload fast enough yung data. So in response to that, one of our current projects right now at NCDA is to deploy computers to these LGUs, specifically or exclusively dedicated for the uploading of PWD data. Just to give you an idea on how significant that project is, at the start of the year, we have, I think, less than 400,000 registered. So that's since the inception na nagkaroon ng PRPWD up to that point. But right now, like what I mentioned a while ago, as of November this week, we have 764,677. So if you compare, malaki talaga yung naging jump niya. And we can expect na maging mas exponential pa yung growth na ito kasi we still have several computers to deploy and hopefully magamit siya talaga ng mga PDAOs natin. Okay, to my next point. Regarding the establishment of accessible polling places, of course, this is good, no? This is really favorable for our persons with disabilities. However, I would just like to also take this opportunity, I guess, to really advocate for the full implementation of BP 344 or our accessibility law. Kasi I was listening a while ago to the comments from the consultation sessions, and I think most of the concerns there would have been addressed whether or not there is an APP or an EAPP only if only the structures are BP 344 compliant in the first place. And BP 344 is a law that's actually older than me. It's a really old law, but right now we are still struggling with the full implementation of BP 344. So ayun, kasi kung fully implemented lang siya sana, we wouldn't really have, I mean, of course, may mga iba pang features yung 10366 natin with regard to APPs and EAPPs. However, I think bulk of the concerns would have been solved if only fully implemented CBP 344. And on that note, I would just like to update everyone that there are currently improvements being done to the technical specifications with regard to the IRR of BP 344. Like I said, BP 344 is a 40-year-old law. And if you look at its IRR based on our engineers and other technical experts, these are actually no longer up to date. So right now, the draft amendments are underway. We are working on it together with DPWH, DOTR, among others. So definitely, we will share it once available. But I'm mentioning it now kasi I think it's also relevant, especially with COMELEC in the designation of APPs. Kasi baka the APPs we designate are no longer accessible to. Like if we take into consideration the improvements required sa technical specifications dun sa IRR ng BP 344. And then with regard to the other amendments proposed or suggested, dun sa mga pending bills natin sa RA 10366, firsthand, of course, these do seem favorable. However, we at NCDA have yet to formulate an official stand on these pending bills kasi hindi pa siya, usually kasi pag may mga ganitong laws, pinapatawag din, involving PWDs, pinapatawag din yung NCDA to hearings for us to give an official comment there too. Yung mga na-present kanina, actually, hindi pa sila na-raise sa amin ng House. But definitely, we do advocate disability inclusive policy planning. So it's not just something na, okay, whoever sits sa management ng NCDA would determine kung okay ba tong laws na to or not, but we really advocate having public consultations with the sector themselves. Kasi lagi nang sinasabi sa disability sector, nothing about us without us. Okay, and then also satellite EAPPs were mentioned a while ago. So I guess from our end, I'm just curious how many PWD voters voted via the 3 SEAPPs. Kasi if I remember correctly, when I checked the COMELEC resolution, there are 3 specifically for 3 SEAPPs for PWD, so Hospicio de San Jose, Tahanang Walang Hagdan, and the NVRC. So I think this is really good kasi although marami pa rin sa mga PWDs natin na syempre they want to experience the whole thing and also in line with the general idea of mainstreaming na hindi sila parang dinediscriminate but they're really part of, you know, the entire thing. But of course, meron din kasing iba na hirap talagang lumabas. So actually, napakaganda nitong in-implement ng COMELEC na merong satellite EAPP. So siguro po Sir Attorney Basinio, we can work together. We just want to see also the data kung dun sa 3 ba na na-establish na SEAPP, marami bang bumota sa kanila. And second, if we can explore, if that was successful, if we can explore having more of that all over the country. Kasi the 3 SEAPPs are in Mega Manila, Quezon City, Rizal, and I forgot where the other one is, but also in NCR. So hopefully we can also have SEAPP somewhere in Visayas and Mindanao, if that was successful. Tapos, ano pa ba? So another thing, I think we would just like to express our interest in really forging closer collaborations with CSOs like ULAN and then with other government agencies like VSO in COMELEC. Actually, a while ago, si COMELEC chair, nung kausap ko siya sa labas, he did say nga that he wants VSO and NCDA to work together on work together on this. Kasi nabanggit din na the reason why nagko-collect ng disaggregated data, especially with regard to the types of disabilities of those registered, is for us to see if there are any more policy changes or improvements that we can do. Siyempre, when we talk about persons with disabilities, most people, ang naiisip nila, the wheelchair users, the visually impaired, but like what I mentioned right now, there are 10 types of disabilities. So of course, it is also crucial for us to really examine our existing policies if all types of disabilities are being considered by the policies that we do have. Also, perhaps we can see dun sa actual voter turnout, more or less namimimic ba niya yung distribution in terms of types of disability. For example, kasi nga, we do have, in the registry, we can see ano yung mga pinakamaraming types of disability, for example. So in terms of voter turnout, more or less similar din ba siya? And the reason why I'm asking that is, if hindi, baka there is a disconnect somewhere that we can investigate and look into. Yun, things like that. So, okay, and finally, on the recommendation as to the role of government agencies, I just noticed all four executive agencies mentioned, DOH, DPWH, DILG, DepEd, they're actually all member agencies of NCDA. So what I can offer now on behalf of NCDA is for us to facilitate, in terms of policy development, for example, perhaps we can create a technical working group specifically for this matter so that there is really close collaboration. Tsaka to be fair naman to NCDA's member agencies, like when it comes to our board meetings, they are always well represented. USEX, ASEX would attend, and they would really share their commitment in how we can further improve the rights of persons with disabilities. So yan, and also commitment to work with with VSO. Finally, yung suggestion for more trained personnel, I think that's also very crucial when it comes to disability sensitivity, diba? How do you handle or how do you interact with wheelchair users, for example, or with the visually impaired, with the deaf, things like that. And we do have those disability sensitivity trainings at NCDA. So allow me to just use this opportunity to also advertise that. So for those na parang perhaps we can also work with COMELEC in training personnel, or even with ULAN in perhaps training yung mga volunteer groups para during elections better trained personnel nga yung nandun in response to the survey. So there, I guess I would just like to end my reaction in advocating really for the whole of nation approach in dealing with things like this. This is something, I mean, I'm new to government, but ever since pumasok ako sa government just this year, this is something I always hear, no? Whole of nation approach. Even the representatives from the UN, this is what they always emphasize. So although we in government are the primary duty bearers, I think it's really good na yung participation ng civil society is not just token participation, but really a part or close partnership and collaboration with government. So there, thank you very much.
Ayan po. Thank you, Attorney Ramos, for the very insightful reaction. Ayun nga po, ulitin ko po, one of the benefits of events like this po is yung parang nabanggit nga po na offer of collaboration between different agencies, both in the government and private sector po. And if inclusivity and accessibility for senior citizen and accessibility and PWDs is aware po, parang more agencies involved, parang multi-pronged attack po, para nga po ma-answer natin yung problems tulad po na na-point up yung data po na magkakaiba po. So with that po, let me introduce po our second panel reactor for today po. She is a holder of a Bachelor of Laws degree from San Sebastian College, Recoletos, Manila, where she is distinguished as First Honorable Mention. She is also a former legal officer of the Philippine Statistics Authority's Legal Division. She is concurrently Attorney 5th and Acting Attorney 6th of the Precincts and Voting Centers Division, Elections and Barangay Affairs Department of the COMELEC. Introducing, and please give a warm round of applause to Attorney Jennifer D. Felipe.
Hi, good morning po. Sorry, past 12 na pala. Good afternoon, good noon. Attorney Ron, wala pa kaming lunch. Sorry, joke lang. Joke lang po, joke lang. I'm Attorney Jennifer D. Filippi po. I'm here in behalf of Director Divina E. Blas Perez. I-correct ko lang po si Sir. I'm already the Division Chief at Attorney 6 po of the Precincts Division of the Election and Barangay Affairs Department. And actually po, ako ay naging head din ng VSO for from December to March. So before the elections po. And I'm here po with yung aking pong predecessor, si Ared Balangkit sa VSO. And then ako po, and then si Ared Besinio na po. There's another one na hindi po namin kasama ngayon. So, best friend ni Attorney Ron. Nagchika pa ako. So, bibilisan ko lang po, Okay, ito po yung reaction dun sa presentation ni Attorney Ron lang. So, page by page or slide by slide, bibilisan ko po. Sa number 3 slide, total number of PWD and SC voters who signified intent to vote in EAPPs. For the 2022 NLE, based on the slide of Attorney Ron po, has a total of 418,221. Whereas po, our data is only 340,642. So somehow, really there's a disparity. There's a clear disparity and we have to solve that. Hindi ko po alam kung saan galing yung data ni Attorney Ron, but that is the data we gathered in EBAD and this is prior to the VSO. So EBAD po ang concern, yung division ko po ang concern sa gathering ng data even prior po sa operationalization ng VSO. Okay? Now, one voting center with EAPP in Ilocos Sur, Region 1. There is no reported EAPP po in Ilocos Sur. Wala pong in Region 1, in Ilocos Sur, or in any province po ng Region 1. So, I don't know po kung saan din nakuha. So yun po, wala rin po. And slide 21, voting centers needing EAPPs. Please take note po that since 2016 up until the 2022 NLE, all election officers were instructed to conduct ocular inspection of voting centers. And the purpose, one of the purpose of that is for them to determine if there are voting centers that would require EAPPs. So ibig sabihin po, kung hindi sila nag-require ng EAPPs, hindi sila nag-request ng EAPP, there is nothing for us to be based on yung pag-establish ng EAPP. It will not come from us, from the main office po directly. It will come from the election officer. So somehow along the way, nagkaroon po siguro ng, we don't know po sa ating mga election officers, in fairness naman po with them, baka hindi po sila nag-request ng EAPPs, maybe because yung kanilang mga voting centers ay nasa ground floor. And there was also a slide po earlier in Region 3, ang sabi po ni Attorney Ron, there was no EAPP. Because 99% po ng voting centers sa Region 3 are located in the ground floor. That's why hindi po sila nag-create ng EAPPs. Even EAPPs, yung accessible polling places po, wala ring masyado sa Region 3 because nasa ground floor na po sila lahat. Okay? Sa slide 22 po, other reasons as to why EAPPs are needed. We agree po with the presentation of Attorney Ron that the grounds for the establishment of the EAPPs in Resolution number 10761 should be increased, or there should be other grounds. There should be other grounds that should be put there in the resolution for the creation of the EAPPs. And that's one po that the VSO should take into consideration. Slide number 23, number of voting centers needing EAPPs. Okay, so nasagot na po ito ni Attorney Ron kanina. This is based on the reports. As I mentioned po, hindi naman po ibig sabihin na the EO has the discretion or the decision to request for the establishment of EAPPs. It means that the public cannot request for the creation or establishment of EAPP. So pwede din naman po. So it's a matter of coordination, it's a matter of talking yung sa mga EO po natin sa ground, kung paano po sila magkakaroon ng EAPP sa mga voting centers. Now on suggested improvements po, this is slide 25 and 26, separate rooms for EAPPs. Please take note po that the first sentence of section 4A of resolution number 10716 states that the EAPP shall be established as far as practicable in one of the classrooms at the first or ground floor of all covered voting centers. So that's the mandate po ng COMELEC. it should be established as far as practicable on one of the classrooms. Yun po yung priority dapat. Hindi siya dapat i-establish outside ng mga rooms muna. Kung may available, then use it. Kung wala po, then establish like a tent or a makeshift dun sa loob ng voting center if there is a space. Kung wala po, you can establish that outside the voting center but as in close proximity doon sa voting center. Okay? Use of accessible rooms and locations near entrance, ground floor or near the entrance as EAPP. So yun po yung sinabi ko kanina. Put up more EAPPs. So as I said po, the policy, the standing policy of the commission po is for the EOs to request for the establishment. That's why ang bottom line po natin, hindi lahat po ng voting centers nationwide are may EAPPs. Yun lang pong mga election officers na nag-request ng EAPPs. Okay? Accessible facilities inside EAPPs, including adult sitting, provisions for drinking water, snacks, cleaner toilets, ventilation, and others. These are things po that the VSO, the COMELEC through the VSO should be looking into for future electoral exercises. We admit naman po that these are the things that we are somehow hindi pa masyadong na-explore, hindi pa masyadong na-implement. So we know that these are things na kailangan pa ng improvements. Okay, more visible large signage and directions. Please take note also po of Section 7 of Resolution number 10716. It requires, among others, the use of large print signage and directional signs at the entrance of the voting center leading to the EAPP. So there, in terms of policy po, there's enough procedure para po sa convenience ng ating mga EAPP voters. Provided po yan lahat sa resolution natin. Large signs, directional signs, meron po yan lahat sa ating resolutions. Okay, put VCM in EAPP. This is one of the most recommendation. Ito talaga yung clamor nila eh. So please take note po, VCMs are clustered precinct specific. Hindi po tayo, as of now po, wala tayong VCM na pwedeng gamitin ng lahat ng mga botante sa isang voting center kasi clustered precinct specific po siya. Ano pong ibig sabihin nun? Take note po na yung EAPP, it will cater to voters sa isang voting center. Ang isang voting center po may be composed of 10 or more than clustered precincts. Yung VCM po natin, nilalagyan po yan ng mga clustered precincts. So bawat isang VCM, isang clustered precinct. So wala pa po tayo ngayon sa operation aspect na VCM na pwedeng mag-cater sa lahat ng clustered precinct sa isang voting center. So that's one of the technical aspect na pwede pong tignan or explore ng COMELEC through the ITD in coordination with the VSO po. Okay? Remember din po yung concept ng EAPP, hindi po identifiable yung mga botante sa EAPP except or unless on the day of the election. Kasi voluntary po yung pagboto sa EAPP. Hindi po yan, remember po yung sabi ni Attorney Ron kanina, pagpasok mo po ng voting center, tatanungin ka kung ikaw ay PWD or SC, tatanungin ka dun sa desk, sa information desk, saan mo po gustong bumoto? Sa EAPP or sa iyong presinto, sa regular precinct? So hindi po identifiable yung mga botante na ilalagay or boboto sa EAPP unless on the day na po ng election. Okay? Now for the PWD and SC voter experience, many PWD and SC voters were reassigned in upper floors. Paano po ba nag-a-assign ang COMELEC ng mga PWD and SC sa EAPPs? We are talking here about EAPPs, hindi na po yung emergency accessible EAPP. Sa EAPP po, under 10366, nakalagay po doon, they should manifest their intent to vote in EAPPs, in accessible polling places. So meron po tayong tinatawag na supplementary data form or SDF sa COMELEC. Meron pong part doon sa supplementary data form, it's just a one-page paper, na makikita ninyo doon, na may question doon na, do you want to vote in EAPP? Then there are two boxes there, yes and no box. So pag nag-check si PWD or si SC po ng yes box, automatic po si EO i-assign siya sa EAPP, which is located dapat sa ground floor. Okay? Ngayon, for example po, noong 2016, bumoto siya sa EAPP because nag-signify siya ng intent to vote. Ngayon, ang napansin niya ay ang tagal bumoto sa EAPP kasi maraming mga PWD and SC, tapos parang hindi na masyadong magamit yung express lane dahil sabay-sabay bumoto, etc. So ang sabi niya, the following registration, aalis na lang ako ng EAPP, babalik ako dun sa aking dating presinto. So how can he or she do that? Pwede po siyang pumunta sa election officer, mag-fill up ulit ng supplementary data form, and this time, i-check niya po yung no box. Okay? So kung mangyayari po na matatanggal siya because of the no box, na pag-check niya sa no box, tatanggalin po siya sa EAPP, babalik siya dun sa kanyang dating presinto. And unknowingly, si EO baka mai-assign niya si botante sa presinto na naka-assign sa upper floor without intentionally doing it naman. At saka, ang isa pong comment kanina ni Ared Bisinyo, ni Ared Balangkit po, taga-field po kasi si Sir sa NCR. Siya po yung Assistant Regional in Charge, Regional Director ng NCR. Ang sabi niya po, hindi naman mga election officers ang nag-a-assign ng mga presinto. It was the DESO. Ang DESO po ay DepEd Supervisor Official. Sila po usually yung mga principal, yung mga officer in charge ng ating mga public schools na ginagamit po na voting center. So sila po yung nag-a-assign ng mga presinto kung saan sila ilalagay. Maybe there's some problem sa coordination. Siguro sa dami na ng trabaho ng ating election officer, hindi niya na naiisa-isa kung saan na-assign yung mga presinto. So yun po, yun po yung one reason, maybe one of the reasons bakit po na-reassign si PWD or si SC sa upper floor. Okay? Next po, signified intention to vote in an EAP but was still assigned to upper floor, and confusion over EAP and EAPP signage. So admittedly po, we have no report. Ngayon lang po namin ito narinig. In fact, wala po kaming na-receive na report about this even sa aking division or department. So this should be one of the things that the VSO should investigate. Okay? PWD voter was presumed to be illiterate. Question on ethnicity deemed offensive. Okay, this is also one thing that the VSO should adequately address. And another thing, dun po sa question ng yung pagiging offensive po ng ethnicity, at I was talking to Attorney Ron kanina. Mention niyo po sa akin ito kanina. Meron po kaming pinapa-fill out na form after bumoto sa election para makuha po yung statistics kung ilan ang bumoto na PWD, ilan ang SC, ilan ang IP. Ang purpose po ng COMELEC for that is to determine kung marami bang IP, for example, na bumoto. And kung konti ang bumoto, then we should do something about it. The COMELEC should do something about it. Ano yung mga pwede nating gawin para ma-resolve yung issue or ma-maximize natin yung voter participation ng mga IPs? It's not for anything but for that purpose. It's for policy determination. So siguro po, nagkakaroon lang tayo ng miscommunication sa baba. Kasi sabi ni Attorney Ron kanina, na-offend daw yung mga IPs. Bakit mo ako tinatanong na IPs? Siguro ang iba yung nasa isip nila, bakit mo tinatanong? They feel discriminated about it. But ang purpose po ng COMELEC is not to discriminate, but for policy determination. Para sa susunod na eleksyon, kung meron pong kung it turned out na mababa yung voters turnout ng IPs in this particular area, then we can coordinate and we can do something about it. So yun po yung purpose. Siguro nagkaroon lang ng miscoordination or miscommunication po. Hindi lang masyadong na-inform kung ano yung purpose. Okay? Now, lack of information on EAPPs, this something that the VSO should address together with the EID. Okay, siguro palakasin lang po strengthen lang yung information dissemination on the purpose and the procedure on how to vote in EAPPs. Also, mas mapapalakas po ito, this will be strengthened also in coordination or with the assistance of other government agencies and NGOs. Yun pong ating mga partner agencies and other NGOs. Voting in EAPPs took long to finish. So ito po yun, no? Isang problema din daw yung pagboto daw po sa EAPP ay mabagal. Why? Remember po, sino po yung mga bumuboto sa EAPPs? Yung matatanda at saka yung mga PWDs. So it's understandable na medyo mabagal sila. Kasi yung way ng pag-action nila, di ba? Hindi mo sila pwedeng pabilisin. And this is one of the reasons why hindi rin po namin inallow even before yung mga assistors na bumoto sa EAPPs because it will defeat the purpose of the EAPP and at the same time, it will even take longer to finish the voting in EAPP. As Attorney Ron said, medyo nagkamali lang si Attorney Ron ng pagkaka-recall kanina, ang voting po sa EAPP ay from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Ang nasabi niya po kanina is 5 to 2 p.m. Yung 5 to 2 p.m. po ay voting period sa EAPP. Okay, hindi po sa EAPP. Meron kasing variation yung EAPP. Meron po tayong tinatawag na EAPP, Emergency Accessible Polling Places. Meron tayong tinatawag na EAPP VC. It's EAPP na voting center. Ibig sabihin, meron po siyang sariling machine. Meron siyang sariling VCM. And last po yung tinatawag nating EAPP-SS, parang satellite EAPP po siya. Hindi siya, malayo siya sa voting center, wala siyang sariling machine, kaya po ang kanyang voting time lang ay from 6 to 2 p.m. kasi yung mga balota po doon ay dadalhin pabalik ng mga voting centers para i-feed sa machine. So tatlo po yung types ng EAPP natin during the 2019 and also 2022 NLEs. Okay? Okay, now DESO experience naman po. Oh, there's another one po. Prioritized upon entry but did not know where to go next. So ito po I think related dun sa problem ng signage. Yung EAPP turned into an information desk resulting in delays. This is another aspect po that the VSO should look into. Ano pong nangyari? The information desk, there should be an information desk separate from EAPP. Nadidefeat po yung purpose ng EAPP kung gagamitin lang siya as information desk. And supposed to be, yung EAPP po, dapat ang didiretso lang doon to inquire is either the PWD, the SC, or the heavily pregnant lang. Hindi po lahat ng tao, o hindi lahat ng butante. Okay? Now, EAPP support staff were exhausted. Ito na po yung DESO experience. EAPP support staff were exhausted. Section 26 po, second paragraph of Resolution number 10761 states that the EAPP-SS may opt to wait until a minimum of 10 voters have availed themselves of EAPP before obtaining the ballots, provided, however, that no voter shall be made to wait for an unreasonable long time. Bakit po napagod si support staff? I think this is related po sa inadequate training din. Okay, baka hindi po masyadong nakinig si support staff. Ang sabi po sa resolution, dapat mag-wait si EAPP ng at least a minimum of 10 voters bago po niya pick upin yung balota para hindi naman siya pabalik-balik nga. Kasi talagang kung ilang floors yung buildings ng voting center, tapos si EAPP-SS, every now and then, akyat baba siya, talagang mapapagod po siya. So hindi po, baka ganun ang ginawa niya, kaya po siya napagod. So that's one reason, kasi nangyari na po yan nung nag-mock election kami. Nung nag-mock election po sa Pasig, I remember sa Pasig, second po ako. Sa Pasig first, ganun ang ginawa. Pag may dumarating na senior citizen na boboto, takbo agad si EAPP-SS, kuha agad ng balota. And then pagbalik niya, meron na namang dumating, takbo na naman siya. So ang sabi po sa resolution, there should be at least a minimum of 10. Provided lang hindi mo pwedeng pag-antayin si PWD, SC voter or pregnant voter ng masyadong matagal. Kasi baka umalis, mainip. So yun po yung dahilan. That may be the reason. That's maybe the reason why po napagod si EAPP-SS. Okay? So I guess this should be addressed, or this will be addressed by training. If there's adequate training, then this can be addressed properly. Or another one po is yung additional EAPP-SS. Yung sabi ni Attorney Ron kanina, since nung 2022 po, merong 3 SS support staff per EAP, maybe ngayon po pwede nating dagdagan. Okay? Issue of a requirement to photocopy SC-PWD ID prior to voting in EAP. This should be properly investigated by the VSO. Why? Because wala pong requirement na ganito. If you can give us, Attorney Ron, yung exact detail nito, kasi walang requirement na dapat i-photocopy yung PWD ID. There's no such requirement po sa resolution. Okay, EAP training via FB, not very effective. So ang reason po, constraint of time. Pangalawa, remember, bago po tayo mag-2022 NLE, nandyan pa yung pandemic. Hindi pa po siya totally nagdi-decrease, di ba? Yung effect niya, andyan pa. So that's one reason kaya po yung training ay ginawa through FB. No ID for EAP SS. Again, this is not a particular requirement, but this may be required or can be required by the election officer po. Okay? Some EAP facilities were not suitable for PWD and SC voters. Again, this should be looked into by the VSO. EAP SS coordinated with DESO only on election day. Again, ito po, ang reason nito is because actually po nagkaroon ng problem before. Bago po mag-2022 NLE, hindi kasi naisama ng personnel department yung training ng EAP SS sa training ng poll workers. Hindi po siya nabigyan ng slot. So, yun ang reason kung bakit it was only on the day of the election na nagkita si DESO at si EAP SS at yung mga EB members. So, that's one reason. So, maybe this time that can be corrected po for the upcoming elections. Okay? Late distribution po of EAP kits, signage, etc., and establishment of EAPs but no allocation. So this should also be investigated and addressed to by the VSO po. Okay, EAPPs were everywhere and sometimes better located than EAPs. Again, this should be looked into by the VSO. Yung EAPPs po, sabi ni Attorney Ron, tama siya, it's the isolation polling places. But siguro naman po sa mga upcoming elections, wala na tayong ganyan kasi nag-lessen naman na yung effect ng COVID-19. It was because nagkaroon po ng EAPPs because nga yung possibility na baka may mga bumoto na may mga lagnat, may mga symptoms ng COVID. Okay, sa recommendations naman po, EAPP should serve as backbone of PWD-SC voting, not EAPs. We agree on that. Take note po, this should be remembered by everyone. Yung EAPP po, Accessible Polling Places, is based on Republic Act 10366. Yung EAP po, Emergency Accessible Polling Place, ay hindi po base sa alinmang batas. It was just conceptualized by the COMELEC po as a band-aid solution. It was pilot tested in 2016 or 2019, I think, because hindi pa masyadong alam ng tao yung tungkol sa EAPP. Okay? So, band-aid solution po yung EAP. So, we agree na dapat yung EAPP ang i-strengthen, hindi yung EAPs. Okay? Increase EAPP registration through better information dissemination. Again, we agree on this po. We agree on that also. Recluster all PWD-SC voters to polling places located at the ground floor. Okay, this is the standing policy of the Commission actually. In line with this po, we are following actually Section 154 of the Omnibus Election Code. Ang nakalagay po sa Omnibus Election Code, we are required to put all precincts at the ground floor. Pero reality-wise, hindi naman talaga natin pwedeng gawin kasi hindi naman lahat ng voting centers ay kayang i-accommodate minsan yung number ng voters. So nagkakaroon talaga ng mga botante na naka-assign sa second, third floors. Pero yun po ang sinusunod ng COMELEC. And it's not only for the PWD and SC, para po sa lahat ng mga voters. Now, kung hindi po sufficient yung ground floors, what should be prioritized na ilagay sa ground floors ay yung mga PWD and SC. That's the standing policy po ng COMELEC. Okay, hanggang ngayon po, since nung pumasok ako sa COMELEC in 2010, up until now. Okay? Now, putting VCMs and EAPPs, sinabi ko na po kanina. Okay, yung interpretation po with regard to assignment of voters, the non-territoriality nature of precincts to be assigned in accessible polling places. Medyo nagkakaroon po ng ng confusion. Ano ba talaga? Kasi minsan ginagamit natin accessible precincts. Minsan naman ginagamit natin accessible polling place. So yung polling place po is yung lugar, yung classroom or yung room kung saan bumoboto yung mga tao. Yung presinto po or precinct, yun po yung grupo ng mga botante na ina-assign mo sa polling place. So yun po yung difference niya, no? So ang sabi po sa 10366, COMELEC should create or is actually authorized to create precincts exclusively for PWD and SC to be assigned in accessible polling places. So yun po yung 10366. Now yung non-territoriality nature niya po, ang sinasabi ang sa part po ng COMELEC, ang sinasabi lang ng batas is since ang basic rule po sa pag-assign ng botante sa isang presinto ay kung saan ka nakatira. For example, ako nakatira sa Street X, Barangay San Isidro. Si Director Bisinyo nakatira sa Street Y, the same barangay. So, si Director Bisinyo, mapupunta siya sa presinto na kabilang na create for Street Y. Ako mapupunta sa presinto na create for Street X. So yun po yung bottom line or basic rule sa pag-assign ng presinto kung saan ka nakatira. Okay, ngayon, yun po yung pag-create ng established precinct for PWD and SC under 10366 is an exception to that rule. Hindi na po naka-tie up sa location ng residence ng PWD or SC yung pag-assign sa kanila sa EAPPs. Yun lang po yung sinasabi ng 10366. Hindi po kami bound ng residence ng PWD or SC. And this is to maximize yung kanilang participation during elections. Okay? Kung mapapansin nyo rin po, walang nakalagay sa 10366 na dapat bigyan ng sariling machine ang EAPPs, ang presinto na naka-assign sa EAPPs. But definitely, we all know na that's the purpose. Dapat mabigyan sila ng sariling machine. Like yung sinasabi ni Attorney Ron kanina, kinakluster nyo rin naman pala kami. Kinakluster nyo rin kami sa mga regular voters, di ba? Because the COMELEC is not mandatorily required to put VCM doon sa mga PWD na naka-assign sa EAPPs. So yun, kung babasahin niyo po yung batas, you can go over the provision, you will not see any word to that effect. Pero sabi nga po, ang reason behind the law, the life behind the law is to give them a good voting experience, to give them more convenience. So precisely, yun sana yung ma-achieve ng COMELEC, yun sana yung magawa ng COMELEC. Mabigyan ng sariling machine yung mga botante na naka-assign sa EAPPs. That's one point na masi-strengthen po natin yung EAPP at hindi na tayo pupunta ng EAPP. Okay? Sana po, we are looking forward to that day na mabibigyan po. And with Director Bisinyo at the helm of the VSO, sana matuloy. Medyo nakakalbo na nga si Sir sa problema sa VSO. Gusto niya nang ipasa ulit. Anyways, joke lang. Improving EAPPs, require all EAPPs in all regions, provinces, and major cities. So that will be a Herculean task po for COMELEC. As of now, we have a total of more than 37,000 voting centers nationwide. Kung maglalagay po tayo ng EAPP in all of those voting centers, you can just imagine yung funding requirement niya. Okay? So that's one of the, operationally speaking, medyo mabigat po siya sa COMELEC. Plus, the fact na hindi natin alam kung makukuha natin yung data for each voting center. Pero kailangan nating idepende sa kung sino ba yung gustong bumoto sa EAPP. So that's one reason po kung bakit hindi namin ni-require yan. I remember there's a recommendation to that effect before, pero because of the funding requirement nga po, hindi siya natuloy. Okay? Include as additional criteria the area and size of the voting center and the distance of the voting center from the road. We agree na dapat po i-consider yan ng VSO. Ensure accessibility of EAPPs. Hindi lang po yung EAPPs, we should ensure the accessibility of the voting centers themselves. Why? Kasi po yung EAPPs, nakakonect yan sa voting center. Kung saan located yung voting center mo, doon din located more or less yung iyong EAPP. So ensure the accessibility of voting centers. And one way of ensuring that, hindi na-mention ni Attorney Ron kanina, the COMELEC po has a project way 2016, if I remember it right, with UAPP, the United Architect of the Philippines, DPWH, DILG, and there's another one, I forgot po. Regarding sa Project EASE, ano po yung Project EASE? This is to ensure EASE, EASE po, stands for ensure accessibility, ensure accessibility of schools on election. Yun po yung EASE. Project EASE, ensure accessibility of schools on election. Kaya po namin sinama ang DILG and ang DPWH because ang point ng COMELEC that time, hindi lang naman dapat maging accessible ang voting center sa mga public schools para sa araw ng eleksyon. It should be accessible every day para sa mga estudyante kasi mas matagal na ginagamit ng mga students yung mga schools. So, at any rate, we partnered with them. I remembered nagkaroon pa po yan ng MOA before, and there was a total of more than 500 voting centers po na na-audit. This refers to auditing po ng mga public schools, yung mga ginagamit po na voting center. So that's one way po to ensure na accessible ang mga voting centers natin and ang EAPPs natin. Sana po ma-revive yung Project EASE. The VSO should take care of that po and should take that into consideration. Okay? So ano pa po? Hindi ko na po isa-isahin ulit. Now, with regard po doon sa, I mentioned already yung tungkol po sa assistors, punta na lang po tayo doon sa yung early voting, yung operationalization of early voting or pilot testing. Actually, COMELEC po has already submitted its position paper on that. Medyo mabigat din po yung early voting, although we are in favor of that. But in terms of operations po kasi, pag sinabi kasi nating early voting, merong mga security aspect yan. So yung length ng period niya, and then you have to secure the ballots, yung bayad mo for the electoral boards. So yun po yun. And another one is, ang sinasabi po nila, pag bumoto ka ng early voting, ano yung magiging effect on election day at hindi ka nakaboto on your scheduled na during the early voting? Are you going to be allowed to vote on E-Day or not? So ang point namin, ang point ng COMELEC, we all know po na ang policy ngayon is one ballot, one voter, one ballot. So kung hindi ka bumoto on early voting schedule, tapos nag-i-insist ka ngayon, for whatever reason, nag-i-insist ka ngayon na, ay dapat bumoto ako ng election day kasi hindi ako nakaboto eh. So ano pong gagawin ng COMELEC? We cannot identify those voters. So ang gagawin ng COMELEC is magpiprint siya ×2 ng ballots. Hindi rin naman natin masisisi yung botante if lalo na kung ang reason po ng hindi pagboto niya ay beyond his or her control naman. So that's one aspect po na tinitignan doon sa early voting. But believe us, we are in favor of that, lalo na po sa PWD and SC voters natin. Okay? Maybe it will require just further study lang po. Mall voting, ginawa na rin po yan before. So I guess we can try it again po. Nangyari na po yan before, so I guess we can reconsider po or revive yung mall voting. Accessible ballot design. Kung titignan nyo po sa 10761, may na-mention po dyan na Braille. Meron po dyan na-mention about the use of Braille, lalo na dun sa mga blind voters po natin. Unfortunately, because of lack of funds, hindi rin po siya nag-push through. So that's one thing po na pwedeng i-explore ng VSO. Okay? ensure voting for local officials, and this should be addressed properly to the Congress po. COMELEC po is only at the implementation aspect. So nasa implementation lang po kami. Ensure voting, heavy information dissemination, we agree on that. But this again should be done in coordination and with the assistance po of other government agencies. Okay? Other recommendations po, address data gathering or collection of problems. Alam nyo, ang isa pong, when I was the head of the VSO before, meron na akong mga iniisip na plano. Mas maganda kasi, nag-start kasi po ako parang at the end na nung halos end na ng preparation for the 2022 NLE. So medyo nahirapan ako kasi nangapa ako and I have to go over lahat ng mga resolutions, lahat ng mga projects and programs ng VSO. And then, ang aking looking forward, ang aking pong iniisip, one of the major projects that I want to do is paano yung gathering ng data, paano yung collection ng data. Excuse me. So that's the basic rule po para sa policy determination. You have to know kung sino ba yung mga kliyente mo. You have to know kung sino yung mga butante mo. You have to know kung sino yung mga pinagsisilbihan mo. That's the basic rule. You should have a table data para magkaroon ka ng mga programs and projects. So yun po sana yung aking gagawin kung ako pa po yung nasa VSO by now, pero at Director Vicinio, I know nasa ano niya yan, agenda niya po yan. So that's very basic and that should be done really. But this is again in coordination, should be in coordination with like the NCDA, and one important government agency also is the PSA. Sorry. Okay, the PSA. So last na po, yung tapping ng more accessible private establishments. So this, I think Attorney Ron is referring to this as a way for creating additional voting centers. Well, according po sa Section 155 of the Omnibus Election Code, there are several buildings, especially private establishments, na hindi po pwedeng gawing voting centers. So you can look up po yung Section 155 ng OEC, and we are limited by that provision. So yun lang po, pasensya na. And lastly po, I think ang naging, nung pinadala po ni Attorney Ron or ng ULAN yung PowerPoint presentation ni Attorney Ron, and when I went over it, ang napansin ko, we all the policies are there. Lahat na sa papel. It's a matter of implementation. So doon kami nagkaroon siguro ng pagkukulang. And paano namin malalaman kung in-implement ba siya properly or not? Dapat magkaroon siguro ng monitoring team or monitoring committee ang VSO or ang COMELEC para malaman kung paano in-implement. Like katulad po sa Congress, di ba? Meron tayong tinatawag na oversight committee. So maybe that's one of the projects that the VSO can look into para malaman kung paano yung naging implementation niya. So yun lang po, it's a long way ahead. Marami pa pong rooms, there are some or more rooms to explore, and malayo pa po ang lalakbay ng VSO. VSO po is just a new office. So with your hayaan po muna natin sila na harapin lahat ng mga issues na yan, and I know that with Director Vicinio, it will be resolved one by one, although gradually. So hopefully po by next election, maging mas maganda na po yung ating EAPPs and yung EAPPs po natin. Thank you and good afternoon po.
Ayan po, thank you po Attorney Felipe for giving us an insight po of the inner workings of the COMELEC. I'm sure hindi lang po kaming nandito sa venue yung madaming natutunan, kundi pati po ang online attendees po natin. Ngayon po, unfortunately po, we won't have enough time po to do the open forum po. Pero we are thankful pa rin po kasi napakadami po nating baon na natutunan po ngayon with regard to EAPPs at sa lahat po ng speakers at reactors natin. Finally po, for our last speaker, on behalf of the Honorable Commissioner Nelson J. Celis po. He is the Chief Admin and Attorney 6, also from the Office of the Commissioner Nelson J. Celis. I'm pleased to introduce Attorney Enzo Emmanuel P. Toledo, here to deliver the closing remarks of the Commissioner on his behalf.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson Celis sends his apologies. While originally he intended to go back after his engagement, unfortunately the engagement that he and Chairman Garcia are in right now proved to be longer than expected. So he sent me here instead to deliver his closing remarks. So here it goes. So greetings to everyone. Unang-una po, nais ko pong ipabatid sa ULAN ang aking taus-pusong pasasalamat sa pag-organisa ng event na ito at pag-imbitan na rin po sa amin ni Chairman George Erwin M. Garcia. It is good that we were able to hear feedback about the implementation of Emergency Accessible Polling Places, or the EAPP, which was piloted during the 2022 national and local elections. As shown in the presentation a while ago, the result of the survey conducted by ULAN on EAPP only exhorts us in the COMELEC to provide more accessible polling places to the vulnerable sector. Your recommendations, such as putting up more EAPPs, having more visible or larger signages and directions, and ensuring that EAPPs are accessible so as the facilities inside of it are well noted by the Commissioner, Vice Chairman of the COMELEC's Vulnerable Sectors Office. We also share your suggestion in providing our staff proper trainings to better assist our vulnerable sector. I also support your call to Congress to pass a law on early voting for the vulnerable sectors. In fact, in our meeting last week in the Vulnerable Sectors Office of the COMELEC, to which I am the Vice Chairperson, we have initially discussed the possible steps to be implemented to improve our services to the vulnerable sector population that we cater. We have identified the gaps that need to be resolved for registration to the voting proper to better assist not only the persons with disabilities and senior citizens, but also the indigenous peoples and persons deprived of liberty. We will ensure that we address these identified gaps and challenges. In December, the voter registration will resume, and expected to highly participate also in this activity is the vulnerable sector. It is our duty in the COMELEC to not only promote inclusivity in the voting process, but also to ensure that the constitutional right to suffrage is fulfilled by everyone, especially as duty bearers. Tama po kayo, wala po dapat maiiwan sa pagpili ng dapat na mamuno sa ating bansa. Tama rin po kayo na marami pa pong dapat gawin para mapadali ang buong proseso para sa ating mga kababayan na bahagi ng vulnerable sector. Sa katunayan, kami po sa COMELEC ay magsasagawa ng National Election Summit sa susunod na taon. Hangad po namin dito na makalikom din po ng mas marami pang mga suhestyon hinggil sa pagpapabuti ng proseso sa halalan at patungo sa inaasam din po namin na digital transformation. Muli po, maraming salamat sa pagbibigay ng mahalagang mungkahi sa mga posible na pong gawin ng COMELEC para sa ikabubuti ng proseso ng pagboto ng mga kababayan natin na nasa vulnerable sector. Maipapangako ko po na ito ay hindi mauuwi sa wala dahil ang mga ito po ay magiging isa sa mga gabay namin sa pagpapabuti pa ng aming sistemang ipinatutupad sa COMELEC. Again, good afternoon to everyone and mabuhay.
And thank you, Attorney Toledo. And of course, thank you, Commissioner Celis po for the kind words. And now to close po, I'd just like to thank everyone involved po, especially COMELEC and all its offices involved, including the VSO and EBAD, the NCDA, the DILG, the DepEd, and of course, the Office of the Vice President, Sara Duterte po. And now po, as we close, nagpapasalamat po kami sa ULAN sa pagpunta niyo po sa munting event na to. At kami po ay umaasang marami po tayong baon na bagong kaalaman para po sa ating mga PWD and senior citizen voters. Salamat po ulit at thank you po sa ating online attendees. Ako po si Attorney Josh Quiros for ULAN and maraming salamat at magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. So ayun po,